Chapter 316. Lin Fengting returned to Switzerland. The Lin clan kept their promises. For hundreds of years, the Lin clan rarely promised anything seriously, but once they made a promise, they would never fail to fulfill it. Lin Fengting promised to lend the sword to Qin Weibai, so this sword strike could not be fake. A sword strike with all his strength. The strongest sword strike. This sword strike could do a lot of things. If he unsheathed the sword without any scruples, he could kill an invincible realm expert, block the sword Emperor Wang Tianzong, and contend with the most mysterious god in the purgatory of heaven capital. This sword was unsheathed at the most critical moment, and it was even enough to change the general trend. If he wanted to change the general trend, he must understand the general trend. So after returning to Switzerland, Lin Fengting had been studying the information of the dark world. At the same time, he was slowly adjusting his state. The headquarters of the Lin clan really stood aloof from the world. They didn't even have the most basic intelligence organization. But the branches of the Lin clan were all over the world, and there were many wealthy families that could participate in the game of the dark world. Although the headquarters of the Lin clan rarely contacted the branches, they were not really inseparable. At least when Lin Fengting needed intelligence, the major branches would report the information to Lin Fengting as soon as possible. It was late at night in Switzerland. The light was still on in Lin Fengting's study. The luxurious and spacious desk was full of documents. Folders, videotapes, text materials, and video materials were all placed in front of Lin Fengting. Lin Wuxia, the heir of the Lin clan, sat opposite Lin Fengting, and accompanied his father to look through the mountain of materials. The chaos in the dark world today was no secret. It was completely clear at a glance. All the superpowers were caught in a bitter fight. People died every day. Almost all the superpowers fell into a strange circle, where they wanted to win, but couldn't win. They wanted to retreat but didn't dare to retreat. Now it would seem that all of the superpowers were bracing themselves to hold on. But the more Lin Fengting looked, the more confused he became. Because in his eyes, the situation today was really chaotic. There was no logic or pattern in the chaos. That was the reality. But it was completely different from what he had expected. Qin Weibai told him when she was in Australia that the Samsara Palace had been psychologically prepared for everything today. If this sentence was interpreted from another perspective, it was the Samsara Palace who had planned everything today. Even if they didn't have the ability to control the entire situation, they were definitely one of the main forces behind the scenes. At the very least, they were able to anticipate all of this, and they would definitely have made sufficient preparations for everything that happened today. But Lin Fengting did not see any preparation from Samsara Palace. Like other forces, the Samsara Palace was also losing, holding on and consuming. Moreover, because of their short appearance and lack of foundation, the Samsara Palace could even be said to have suffered the heaviest losses. In 3 years, 3 medium-sized consortiums attached to the Samsara Palace in Europe had been destroyed, and more than half of an elite force codenamed Samsara had been lost. As for the rewards, Lin Fengting stared at it for a long time. But he really didn't see what Samsara Palace had gained in the past 3 years. Not being able to tell was what puzzled him the most. He didn't know what the Samsara Palace wanted to do, nor did he know what benefits the Samsara Palace would get if it continued to develop like this. Was it because the Samsara Palace had been prepared, but the current situation made their preparation completely ineffective? Or was it because of something else? Lin Fengting put down the document and took a sip of tea. The tea was already cold. It was a little bitter when it entered his mouth, but it was refreshing. What do you think? Lin Fengting looked at Lin Wuxia sitting opposite him and suddenly asked. Obviously, the situation is completely out of control. Lin Wuxia held the document in his hand. The Purgatory of Heaven capital has pinned down a considerable part of the Wang family of Beihai in Annan State. Although Beihai province is calm, their overseas forces have suffered heavy losses in the past 3 years. Nearly 30 intelligence agencies of the Wang family of Beihai in Europe and America have been destroyed, and a wealthy family attached to them has betrayed them. Kunlun City is even worse. The forces they have established overseas over the years have almost been wiped out. The entanglement between the Dark Knights and Knights Templars is actually the Vatican's suppression of the Dark Knights. But the escalating battle between them has aroused the dissatisfaction of the Shadow Throne. The Shadow Throne in Europe is an official agency. Although it is to deal with the Black Ghost in Africa, it does not rule out the possibility of intervening in the battle between the Vatican and the Dark Knights. In America, the fantasy world has joined forces with the Men in Black of Star State to resist Kunlun City, but the appearance of the Shadow Throne makes them hesitate. While they preserve their strength, they also give Kunlun City time to entangle with them in Star State. So the Men in Black and the fantasy world have begun to have opinions about the Jiang family of South America that invited the Black Ghost. And all kinds of signs show that the attitude of the Heroes Club is very ambiguous. There seems to be a deal between them and the Jiang family of South America. Lin Yuxian recalled the information that could not be more chaotic dully and said with a wry smile, "At present, there are battlefields almost everywhere. The Polar Ground Alliance in Snow Country has recently had serious internal strife. It is said that the activities of the Samsara Palace have been found in Snow Country. In Europe, it is the battle between Knights Templars and the Dark Knights. The Vatican is involved, the Shadow Throne is covetous, and the Samsara Palace stands with the Dark Knights to fight against the Vatican. But there are also shadows of Kunlun City, the fantasy world, and the Jiang family of South America. The Men in Black is the official organization of Star State. At present, they seem to have their eyes on Kunlun City, but they also have ideas about the Shadow Throne, so they have frequent contact with the Samsara Palace. Recently, some masters have appeared in the camp of the Samsara Palace. They seem to come from the purgatory of Heaven Capital, but the masters of the Samsara Palace have also appeared in Annan State. The Heroes Club and the Jiang family of South America seem to have ideas about both sides. They have more small movements, and it is impossible to analyze their specific goals at present. Lin Yuxian rubbed his temples and said helplessly, "There are too many possibilities now, and the relationship between the enemy and us is completely chaotic. The Wang family of Beihai, the Purgatory of Heaven Capital, the Samsara Palace, Kunlun City, the Dark Knights, the Fantasy World, the Heroes Club, the Jiang family of South America, the Polar Ground Alliance, the Vatican, the Men in Black, the Shadow Throne. Dad, now all the forces in the Dark World, whether they are superpowers or official forces, are involved. There are too many possibilities. Any two forces may cooperate with each other, and naturally, they will betray each other. This situation is not good at all." Too many possibilities meant that the situation was completely out of balance, and no superpower had a reason to compromise. In your opinion, is there any beneficiary in such a chaotic situation? Lin Fengting asked. No. Lin Yuxian said without hesitation. Everyone has suffered heavy losses. The Dark World has lost a lot of blood. In the past 3 years, including the final battle of Heaven Capital, the Dark World has lost at least hundreds of experts of the Thundershocking realm, and more experts of the Fire-Flaming realm. In this situation, there may be huge benefits in the end, but at least now, everyone is a loser. I think if they had known that there would be today's situation, they would not have chosen to go to war. It doesn't matter now how the war started. Any force is now fighting for the sake of war. They don't want to fight, but they have no choice and can't get out. Lin Fengting nodded. He agreed with his son. What's the key point? Lin Fengting asked again. The key point. Lin Yuxian tried hard to think about the information he had read. After a while he suddenly raised his eyebrows and said, "The Samsara Palace." Lin Fengting narrowed his eyes and did not speak for a while. The Samsara Palace was indeed the key point. This chaos began when the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City joined hands to suppress the Samsara Palace. The situation was also completely out of control at that time. The war continued until now, and there were battlefields everywhere. Snow Country, Europe, America, Annan State, they were all fighting. And it was incredible that the Samsara Palace could be seen on all the battlefields. And they were all quite active. When all the superpowers didn't want to fight but had to fight, every time the Samsara Palace took the initiative, the situation would be more chaotic. Then it developed into today's irremediable situation. The Samsara Palace was indeed the key. In recent years, every battle that could escalate conflicts and contradictions seemed to be provoked by the Samsara Palace. So today, The Samsara Palace was also the party that suffered the most. But what did the Samsara Palace want? According to the current situation, the Samsara Palace absolutely could not win. Qin Weibai did not borrow Lin Fengting's sword. Even if Lin Fengting sold himself to the Samsara Palace, the Samsara Palace would not get any benefits. Why did she do that? Lin Fengting whispered to himself. According to the analysis of the intelligence, the Samsara Palace wants to get its own foundation. Lin Yuxian shook his head. This speculation is reasonable, but now it seems unreliable. Just for its own foundation. Why does it have to make a scene that can't end? Even if it can't end, it will end. Lin Fengting said faintly. If it is forced to end, what do you think will be the result? Lin Yuxian subconsciously glanced at his father. Lin Fengting's face was calm. Lin Yuxian pondered for a while and said faintly, if it is forced to end, at least one superpower will be completely destroyed, maybe. There was a hint of caution and temptation in his tone. Maybe there will be new superpowers coming into the secular world, just like the purgatory of Heaven Capital appeared in Heaven Capital 3 years ago. Lin Fengting said noncommittally, which is the most likely force to be destroyed? The Samsara Palace. This time, Lin Yuxian did not hesitate. The destruction of the Samsara Palace is not possible. Now it seems that it is basically a foregone conclusion. Lin Fengting fell silent. He knew that what his son said was true. But how could people believe the fact that the Samsara Palace suddenly destroyed itself? Father, Lin Yuxian hesitated. In a short time his face turned red, and cold sweat oozed from his forehead. Are we going to enter the secular world? Until now, he still did not know that Qin Weibai had asked Lin Fengting to borrow the sword. Lin Fengting suddenly found so much recent information about the dark world. Lin Yuxian subconsciously felt that the Lin clan was going to enter the secular world. Why should we enter the secular world? Lin Fengting shook his head and whispered, we are different from the Wang family of Beihai. The Lin clan is a clan, the Wang family of Beihai is also a clan, and the Jiang family of South America is also a clan. The biggest difference between the latter two and us is that they are used to gathering all branches together, so that they will be more powerful, but there will be more internal hidden dangers. So they will clean up internal discord and contradictions from time to time. If these contradictions can be completely eliminated, they will continue to be brilliant until the contradictions accumulate again to the extent that they have to be cleaned up. The cycle will start again. If they succeed, they will still be at the peak. But if they fail, the consequences will be equally unimaginable. But we are different. We spread out all the branches. Everyone can leave and get enough support. If they want something, they can get it themselves. The headquarters of the Lin clan can shelter them when necessary, but there is nothing worth coveting here. If we don't enter the secular world, the Lin clan will always be the Lin clan. Maybe some branches will disappear and the connection will be broken, but we will have more branches go out. We don't pursue power, but freedom can create everything. Lin Fengting looked at his son with a smile and whispered, I think it's good. Lin Yuxian breathed a sigh of relief and laughed. I think it's good too. But Qin Weibai of the Samsara Palace found me. Lin Fengting said. She wanted to borrow a sword stroke from me. I agreed, so I came to look through these materials. You agreed? Lin Yuxian was shocked. I just lent her the sword stroke that I owed the Li family. Lin Fengting shook his head. Lin Yuxian's eyes flickered and he said thoughtfully, when does she want to use this sword stroke? A month later, in Snow Country. Lin Fengting said. Snow Country. Lin Yuxian's pupils contracted, and he said with a smile, she intends to completely involve the Polar Ground Alliance. Dad, can I go to Snow Country with you? Lin Fengting glanced at him. I wanted to go to Zhongzhou State. Lin Yuxian said. I'm about to enter the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. Maybe I'll get some inspiration. There's still time. Lin Fengting thought for a while and said, go to Zhongzhou State first, and then go to Snow Country. There's no hurry. Lin Yuxian hesitated and nodded. I heard that Li Tianlan is back. I'm looking forward to the battle between him and Wang Xingxiao. I'm afraid that the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. Lin Fengting said with a smile. What do you mean? Lin Yuxian looked confused. Lin Fengting shook his head and didn't say much. He just said casually, "Go if you want to. Be careful. Something big is going to happen in the dark world recently." Lin Yuxian nodded, stood up, and walked to the door. When he was about to walk out of the study, he suddenly paused and whispered, "Father, have you ever wondered why Qin Weibai asked you to borrow this sword stroke?" He hesitated and continued, "After all, Senior Li is still here." Lin Fengting's face was calm. He stood up, walked to the window, and opened it. It was late at night outside the window. Only the sound of insects could be heard in the quiet night. In Australia, after the curtain call of the opera, he found Qin Weibai, who had not left Sydney, and asked her this question. Since she wanted to borrow the sword, why didn't she go to Senior Li? The other party seemed to have more reasons to take action. But Qin Weibai's answer was extremely indifferent. That was the indifference of having no trust in the Li family. The Wang family of Beihai is overbearing, and the Li family of Zhongzhou State is paranoid. Only the Lin clan has affection. It's real. If there is a force in the world that I can completely trust, it can only be the Lin clan. This was Qin Weibai's original words. The Wang family of Beihai was indeed overbearing. But the Li family, how paranoid had it been over the years? Lin Fengting looked at the sparse starry sky outside the window thinking. Lin Yuxian quietly retreated. A bright arc of light lit up the night sky as far as the eye could see. The arc of light flew and was brilliant in the night sky. With a momentary brilliance, it fell into the dim stars. The meteor fell. It began to drizzle in the sky. The rain was hazy. A clear yet blurry figure abruptly appeared below Lin Fengting's building. It was abrupt and natural. It seemed to be blown by the night wind, or falling by the rain. He appeared there without warning, but it was extremely harmonious. In the drizzle late at night, it was an ordinary but not ordinary middle-aged man. His appearance was ordinary. What was not ordinary was his dressing. He was dressed in plain clothes and shoes, and yet, in the middle of the night, the middle-aged man was wearing a pair of sunglasses. He was bald, and on his bald head were 9 neat and tidy ring scars. He could be said to be a monk, but he held a white horsetail whisk in his hand. A monk with a Taoist horsetail whisk in his hand, or a Taoist priest with ring scars. Cloth clothes, horsetail whisk, ring scars, and sunglasses. These nondescript clothes were combined with him, but there was a kind of indescribable nature. He stood in the night and raised his head. His gaze seemed to pass through the falling rain and fall on the highest place. A trace of shock finally flashed in Lin Fengting's eyes. His figure flickered, and in the next second, he was standing directly beside the middle-aged man. "What's there?" Lin Fengting asked. His voice was loud, and he emphasized his words, which seemed very clear. He did not ask what the other party was looking at, because he was blind. His voice was very heavy, because the other party was close to deaf and mute. He was Lin Su, Lin Fengting's younger brother. There was no such thing as a metaphysics grandmaster in the Lin clan, but Lin Su had been playing this role for many years. There was Wuxian Xuanzi in Zhongzhou State. The people in the Lin clan did not know who was more profound, Lin Su or the other two. However, compared with the other two, Lin Su did not do a very good job of protecting himself. It was true that Lin Su was punished by the heavens for revealing the secrets of heaven. At the age of 20, Lin Su lost one eye, then the second eye, and all kinds of illnesses followed. His martial arts strength, which was not bad, began to plummet. So Lin Su began to shave. Then, when his hearing gradually became less sensitive, he picked up the horsetail whisk again. In recent years, Lin Su's hearing had been declining, and it had become a little difficult for him to even speak. In recent years, he had basically stopped speaking and even rarely appeared in front of the Lin clan. But every time he spoke, it basically meant that there would be one more powerful branch of the Lin clan. Lin Fengting had heard from his father that Lin Su's blessing in this life was extremely deep. In terms of luck, it was far more than Lin Fengting's by several times or even dozens of times. He was originally the most suitable person to be the patriarch of the Lin clan. If he had focused on martial arts, he was even expected to become a real chosen one, stronger than Wang Tianzong. But Lin Su came into contact with metaphysics. He destroyed himself and used his own blessing to condense the majestic luck for the entire Lin clan. The Lin clan stood in this world. If there was freedom and ease, there must be sacrifices. Lin Su was the sacrifice of the Lin clan. Lin Fengting was also the sacrifice of the Lin clan. Just like he named his son Lin Yuxian. The Lin clan was leisurely. How could Lin Yuxian really be leisurely in this life? Lin Su seemed to notice Lin Fengting. He raised his hand holding the horsetail whisk and pointed to the sky. His arm trembled violently. The snow-white horsetail whisk scattered in the night rain and was blown up by the wind, like a head of bitter white hair that had long lost any vitality. Don't say it if it's not important. Lin Fengting said. I have to say it. Lin Su's voice was hoarse and dry, and it seemed a little stiff and slow. The demon star fell. The demon star? Lin Fengting raised his eyebrows. Lin Su stood where he was and seemed to be thinking. Are you going to enter the secular world? He was silent for a long time before he asked, that woman? Her name is Qin Weibai. Lin Fengting said. Not for her. She borrowed the sword. I also borrowed the sword that I owed the Li family that year. She is the demon star. Lin Su said slowly. His voice did not become smoother as he spoke, but became more and more dry and stiff. He was a master of metaphysics, but he was not omniscient and omnipotent. At this moment he knew Qin Weibai's name and Lin Fengting's sword. Only then could he know more things. This sword will be used in Snow Country. Lin Fengting said. You don't approve. But one strike is not enough. Lin Su said with difficulty. Fiend Star, she's asking for death. It's this man. Qin Weibai? Lin Fengting was shocked. He recalled the information he had read. He couldn't see any hope for the future of the Samsara Palace, nor could he see what the Samsara Palace wanted to do. Was Qin Weibai asking for death? Was that the answer? However, why does she want to die? Lin Fengting asked. The corner of Lin Su's mouth was already bleeding. The blood dripped onto the ground, mixing with the sound of the rain. The sound was faint and distant. I'm dealing with a calamity on behalf of others. He replied. Who? I don't know, it can't be calculated. What happens after she dies? A new era. So what if I don't die? It is also a new era. Then why did she seek death? I'm dealing with a calamity on behalf of others. All the questions suddenly returned to the original point. Lin Fengting was thoughtful. It turned out that this was a dead knot that couldn't be avoided. There was no choice and no way out. Will she die? Lin Fengting asked. Lin Su was silent for a while, then said hoarsely, she will definitely die. Lin Fengting frowned. He didn't think there was anything wrong with it, but he felt it was a pity. It would be such a pity if such a beautiful and peerless woman were to perish. Lin Fengting whispered. What will happen in the Battle of Snow Country? The Fiend Star will cause chaos. The disaster of troubled times. After the troubled times, there would be a new era. Lin Fengting took a deep breath and whispered, I will still use this sword. One sword is not enough. Lin Su's body was a little shaky, and he seemed to be unable to stand steadily. His voice became weaker and hoarser. If you want the Lin clan to continue to prosper, you should protect her from death. Why? Lin Fengting's face finally changed. Cause and effect. Lin Su's voice was strangely hoarse. When he heard the word cause and effect, he inexplicably shivered all over. The world seemed to become extremely gloomy and cold in an instant. Puff. A mouthful of blood sprayed directly from Lin Su's mouth. Lin Su's body fell down softly. Lin Fengting was shocked and suddenly held him. Lin Su fell into Lin Fengting's arms. His face was pale, but he kept saying, Zhongzhou State, go to Zhongzhou State. Chapter 317. Wang Tianzong was waiting for Qin Weibai. In the face of important matters, the most ambitious man in the Wang family of Beihai in the past 100 years had always been very easy to talk to. Qin Weibai postponed the meeting time. Then he would wait. There was still a lot of time. Wang Tianzong was not in a hurry. From early morning to dusk, a week was about to pass. Qin Weibai did not come. Wang Tianzong was still waiting. The relationship between the Samsara Palace and the Wang family of Beihai was not peaceful. Especially in recent years, There were constant frictions between the two sides. Many of the Wang family of Beihai's overseas intelligence agencies were destroyed by the Samsara Palace. But Wang Tianzong did not think that Qin Weibai would not have the courage to come to Mount Dibing. She was indeed a cold and sharp woman. In Wang Tianzong's eyes, Qin Weibai was like an absolutely smart or even wise lunatic. She would not flinch. Especially when Li Tianlan had appeared in Zhongzhou State, she would not flinch. Wang Tianzong still could not figure out the cause and effect between Qin Weibai and Li Tianlan. But in the final battle of Heaven Capital 3 years ago, he saw Li Tianlan's sword move. The sword light that lit up in the sky full of stars that night had not faded in the dark world. The frightening sword light tore the night, enough to replace too many unknowns and doubts. With that sword move, Qin Weibai would also come. Wang Tianzong had no doubt about that. Time passed in the rotation of the clock. Dusk passed. Dusk fell. The sky was dark. The waves on the back of the mountain kept hitting the mountain with too much history day and night. The night wind on Mount Dibing dissipated. Except for the sound of tides, the night in the whole mountain seemed to have frozen, like the eve of a rainstorm. A black Mercedes-Benz slowly drove on the mountain road leading to Mount Dibing. The blazing white light illuminated the road ahead. The guards belonging to the Wang family of Beihai at the foot of the mountain stopped the Mercedes-Benz immediately. After confirming the identity of the other party, they immediately reported it, and then waved their hands to let it go. The Mercedes-Benz ran straight up the mountain road, and reached the top under the watchful eyes of countless people. No one stopped it. The Mercedes-Benz shuttled through the vast palaces on the top of Mount Dibing, and finally stopped in front of a hall. This was the last palace on Mount Dibing, but it was very large, even larger than the palace where Wang Tianzong lived. The Mercedes stalled. Flaming Fire, who looked a little tired, quickly got out of the car, walked to the back seat, and opened the door respectfully. Qin Weibai, who had been invited, got out of the car and looked up at the extremely tall hall in her sight. The gloomy and oppressive night quietly became bright and lively. Qin Weibai stood in front of the hall. Although she did not move, she seemed to have gathered all the light around her, so that her whole body was shining. She was so reserved, so proud, so dignified, and so cold. She was wearing a pale golden dress, and half of her fair and delicate arms were exposed to the air. The only decoration on her was a delicate lady's watch. Her long white hair was tied up, and a green hairpin was inserted in her soft hair. She stood there quietly, motionless, but her whole body carried a kind of noble and graceful bearing that almost made people dare not look at her directly. This was a true peerless beauty of the world. She seemed to want to release her beauty in the shortest amount of time, without any scruples, no longer concealing it. Thus, her beauty flourished even more than before. It was as if her perfection had been ignited, blazing and dazzling. The door to the hall opened automatically. Wang Tianzong's calm voice came from the inside, calm and peaceful. "Boss Qin, please come in." The light in the hall spilled out as the door was opened, illuminating the ancient plaque in front of the hall. The two dim words on the plaque looked more and more solemn. Those were the two simplest words. World. The most famous world palace on Mount Dibing. On the top of Mount Dibing, the height of this palace was second only to the stage of formidable person. It was the largest palace in the entire Wang family of Beihai, and also the highest level meeting place of the Wang family of Beihai. For hundreds of years, every time the Wang family of Beihai made a major move, there would be a result first, and then the implementation would begin. There was too much glory and splendor here. It was no exaggeration to say that everything you saw from the World Palace was the world of the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong asked Qin Weibai to meet here, which represented the solemnity and sincerity of the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai's face was calm, and she stepped into the hall. It was like walking into the light from the darkness. The World Palace occupied a large area. There was a main hall and two side halls inside. It was only used for meetings, not for living, so there was only one floor. In this way, under the ceiling that was nearly 30 meters high, the whole layout of the World Palace looked extremely magnificent. Qin Weibai looked extremely small in it. This was the first time that Qin Weibai walked into the World Palace. The decoration in the hall was not luxurious. It could even be said that there was no decoration. But every brick, tile, and column showed the vicissitudes of life, which was heavy and solemn enough to make people tremble. Standing here, it was easy to think of the suffocating power represented by the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai remained calm and collected. She walked on the extremely long carpet spread out in the hall and looked up ahead. There were many steps in the deepest part of the hall. Each step was nearly half a meter high, and there were 9 steps in total. At the end of the steps was a high platform, on which there was a huge chair made of suet white jade. This was the throne of the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong sat on it, which was really superior. Even if Qin Weibai looked up, she could only see Wang Tianzong's feet. She could not even see his face and expression. Qin Weibai's eyes were shining bright and deep, like the distant night sky. She glanced at Wang Tianzong and said, "Come down." Her voice was very soft, but it was particularly clear in the hall. Wang Tianzong stood up from the throne and walked down the steps step by step. The steps were very high, so every step must be down to earth. Wang Tianzong came to Qin Weibai. He smiled and said, "Welcome." His eyes were calm, but there were some fluctuations deep in his eyes. Qin Weibai was really amazing tonight. His unchanging appearance carried a temperament that seemed to have been sublimated. Wang Tianzong had seen so many so-called beauties, but none of them could compare with her. "Sit down." Wang Tianzong pointed to the soft leather sofas arranged vertically on both sides of the carpet. Qin Weibai sat down. It was cool and light. Between the sofas, there was a tea table made of fine sandalwood. The tea table was empty, without tea, water, or flowers. Wang Tianzong also sat down. There was a faint smile on his face, but his eyes were a little cold. "I'm surprised," he said. "I've been waiting for you to see me. But now you appear in front of me. I still haven't received the news that you have entered Beihai province." He asked slowly, "Is the intelligence system of the Wang family of Beihai so bad?" "Not bad." Qin Weibai's tone was brief. "Then how did you do it?" The smile on Wang Tianzong's face remained unchanged. "It's not difficult." Qin Weibai shook her head. "Did you know that I would wait for you in the World Palace?" Wang Tianzong asked again. "It's not difficult." Qin Weibai's answer did not change. "Amazing." Wang Tianzong really laughed this time. A strong smile appeared on his face, which made his eyes become warmer. "This is what I mean. The intelligence agency of the Samsara Palace is really amazing. In the past 3 years, you have destroyed nearly half of the intelligence network of the Wang family of Beihai overseas, but I can't find the operation mode of the intelligence agency of the Samsara Palace. Your intelligence agency seems to not exist. Occasionally there are some flaws, but later it is proved that these are all traps. Such a meticulous intelligence agency is incredible. Your Majesty, you flatter me." Qin Weibai said calmly, "The intelligence agency is not everything. The intelligence agency of the Samsara Palace does have some clever places, but at most, it can only take the lead in some things." Wang Tianzong raised his eyebrows. He took a deep look at Qin Weibai and said with a smile, "Indeed, the intelligence agency is not everything." His fingers tapped on the tea table beside his hand calmly, and he suddenly asked, "How long can the Samsara Palace hold on?" Qin Weibai looked at Wang Tianzong with cold eyes. Wang Tianzong looked at Qin Weibai gently. "Your Majesty, thank you for your concern. The Samsara Palace can hold on." Qin Weibai said, "Now it seems that it is true." Wang Tianzong nodded. "But it is temporary. Your intelligence agency is very strong, but it can only delay the time of your destruction. At least in my eyes. I can't see the hope of the Samsara Palace to continue to develop. The intelligence agency of the Wang family of Beihai may be bloated, but it is not incompetent. As an authority, I can roughly see what you have done in the past 3 years. Oh, the Samsara Palace is really bold. You provoked a war in the Dark World, which is equivalent to a war with the whole Dark World." He shook his head and said blandly, "You brought about your own destruction." "This is the way of the Samsara Palace," Qin Weibai said softly. Her voice was not anxious or regretful, but calm. "Even if it is destroyed in the end, it is the fate of the Samsara Palace. You need help," Wang Tianzong said with a smile. "You need a real ally, not a mutual defensive state with the purgatory of heaven capital, but a completely trustworthy ally. For example? Qin Weibai said calmly. For example, the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong tapped on the table with his fingers. I have a suggestion. The Wang family of Beihai and the Samsara Palace cooperate fully. What do you think? Qin Weibai turned her head and glanced at Wang Tianzong. There was no emotion in her eyes. Nothing much, she said without hesitation. You will all die. Wang Tianzong narrowed his eyes and said with a chuckle, if you cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai, at least there is a chance of survival. As long as you are willing, I can come forward and let the Samsara Palace enter Zhongzhou state. I can settle the final battle of heaven capital. I will personally help you solve the current trouble. At that time, the Samsara Palace will be based on Zhongzhou state, and its future will be limitless. This was definitely an extremely tempting condition. Wang Tianzong did not think that Qin Weibai had any reason to refuse. Qin Weibai did not refuse, but she did not agree either. She raised the corner of her rosy and delicate mouth with a sneer and continued. And then? The Samsara Palace enters Zhongzhou state, and we are allies. Then, is the Samsara obliged to help you wipe out the purgatory of heaven capital? Help you wipe out the Samsara Palace? Or even Sai City? Oh, maybe you will promise the Samsara Palace the position of the war god of Zhongzhou state. Helping you is helping ourselves. Your Majesty, am I right? Wipe out the purgatory of heaven capital. Eradicate Kunlun City, Sai City. There was no need to say what would happen after that. The silence of the Wang family of Beihai many years ago led to the decline of the Li family. It also clearly expressed their will not to share Zhongzhou state with any force. The Wang family of Beihai doesn't need you to do this. Wang Tianzong said blandly, of course if you are willing to do it, we will not object. Then what do you want the Samsara Palace to do? Qin Weibai's tone seemed to be a little surprised. Marriage, Wang Tianzong said. Let Li Tianlan marry Yuetong and join the Wang family of Beihai. I can turn a blind eye to your existence, and the existence of the girl from the Dongqing clan. You can influence Li Tianlan. As long as he joins the Wang family of Beihai, the Samsara Palace will be an eternal ally of the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai looked at Wang Tianzong quietly. After a long while, she suddenly laughed. Along with her smile, the ancient and solemn hall was like 100 flowers blooming, dazzling and dazzling. You are afraid. Qin Weibai looked at Wang Tianzong and said with certainty. Wang Tianzong's pupils contracted and he said in a deep voice, this is the best result for all of us. I won't treat him badly. Wang Tianzong said. Yuetong marrying him is the clearest signal. Boss Qin, do you know the Lin clan? Yes. Qin Weibai's tone was indifferent. She had already guessed what Wang Tianzong wanted to say, and the light in her eyes was colder. The ancestors of the Lin clan had a deep relationship with the ancestors of the Wang family of Beihai. It is no exaggeration to say that the Lin clan came from the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong's eyes were burning. As long as Li Tianlan is willing to join the Wang family of Beihai, I can give him the same status as the ancestors of the Lin clan in the Wang family of Beihai. Here, Li Tianlan can have the same power as Xiaoyao. In the future, his status will be equal to that of the patriarch and equal to that of Shengshao. I can even support him to deal with Kunlun City. I can give him everything he wants. He stood up, waved his hand and said lightly, I know what you want to say. If Li Tianlan joins the Wang family of Beihai, the Samsara Palace and Sai City will definitely change their positions. The Wang family of Beihai will not covet the Samsara Palace and Sai City. When the time is right, Li Tianlan can leave like the ancestors of the Lin clan and establish a family at will. At that time, the family he establishes will also become the eternal ally of the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai listened without saying a word. Until Wang Tianzong finished, she smiled and said, Do you believe what you said? Do you doubt me? Wang Tianzong's tone was cold. It's impossible for the Li family of Beihai to. That's the Li family. I'm talking about Li Tianlan. Wang Tianzong interrupted Qin Weibai with a sneer. Will Li Tianlan really have a good end in the Li family? Boss Qin, we can sympathize with the Li family's collapse, But do you really think that the Li family is good? You know what's going on. Li Tianlan is in the Li family. Even if I don't touch him, even if Kunlun City doesn't touch him, he will not have a good end in the end. The Li family is stubborn. Li Tianlan is a genius, but he carries the burden of the Li family. How ridiculous is that? Joining the Wang family of Beihai is his best choice. Qin Weibai looked at Wang Tianzong. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The subtle movement was not sharp, but it made her look a little lazy. What do you know? She asked. It's just speculation. Wang Tianzong was expressionless and said something insincere. There were some things that Qin Weibai didn't want Wang Tianzong to know. Similarly, there were some things that Wang Tianzong didn't want Qin Weibai to know that he already knew. For example, Huawu, who died mysteriously in Heaven Capital. You hate the Li family, Wang Tianzong said. So it's the best way for Li Tianlan to join the Wang family of Beihai. It does sound good. Qin Weibai nodded and changed the topic. But your Majesty seems to forget something. The Wang family of Beihai is not the Wang family of Beihai hundreds of years ago. And you are not the chosen one ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai. Tianlan is different from the ancestor of the Lin clan. If Tianlan joins the Wang family of Beihai, he may be very popular in the short term. But when he has no value, his end may not be better than his end in the Li family. Your Majesty, you are ambitious. You don't care about anyone, and you can sacrifice everything, including your children, your wife, and even yourself. As long as you think it's good for the Wang family of Beihai, you can sacrifice anything. Hundreds of years ago, your ancestors could sacrifice everything just to protect their families. That's why the Wang family of Beihai exists today. Now you sacrifice everything, including your family, just to protect the Wang family of Beihai. I understand your approach, but I will never work with you. Wang Tianzong paced back and forth in front of Qin Weibai, and didn't speak for a long time. Why do you say that about me? After a long time Wang Tianzong asked. No, why? Qin Weibai shook her head. I don't need evidence. I think so I can refuse you. That's all. You refused me. Wang Tianzong asked thoughtfully. Do you know what will happen to those who refuse me in Mount Dibing? Your Majesty, do you know that when I can bypass your intelligence system in Beihai province and come here, will I bring 2 more people with me? Qin Weibai said with a faint smile. For example, the palace master and deity. Wang Tianzong stared at Qin Weibai and didn't speak. He seemed to be judging whether it was true or not. Time ticked by. Qin Weibai smiled and said calmly, It seems that I'm safe now, right? What about Li Tianlan? Wang Tianzong said expressionlessly, I can't persuade Li Tianlan, and I can't persuade you. You refused my suggestion, so Li Tianlan is my enemy. You can't kill him. Qin Weibai stood up and stared into Wang Tianzong's eyes. She said coldly, Li Honghe can't protect him all the time. He will die. Wang Tianzong said meaningfully. That's because he deserves to die. Qin Weibai's tone unconsciously became a little sharp, and a trace of resentment flashed in her clear eyes. Wang Tianzong was slightly stunned. He looked at Qin Weibai and said in a deeper tone, Do you hate him? Or do you hate the Li family? Qin Weibai took a deep breath. Her snow-white hands clenched and loosened subconsciously. Do you want to know the reason? She asked. Do you believe in destiny? Yes and no. Wang Tianzong said, Destiny is fate or luck. It's not unchangeable. The Li family also has its own metaphysics. Although Li Honghe is not a metaphysics grandmaster, he at least knows a little. Qin Weibai said calmly, Tianlan was born with great luck, but his personal luck was almost drained by Li Honghe and transferred to the Li family as a whole. Wang Tianzong frowned slightly. He didn't understand metaphysics, but after spending a long time with Xian Xuanzi, he at least knew something. Li Tianlan's luck seemed to be extremely strong 3 years ago. What do you know? Qin Weibai said coldly. That's the luck condensed by Li Honghe with thousands of dead people of the Li family. It looks extremely strong, but in fact it's all death qi. If there is no accident, Tianlan's life will be extremely smooth and unstoppable. But it's difficult for him to live to middle age with the luck condensed by death qi. At that time he will definitely die. But at that time, Tianlan will have brought the Li family to the peak again. Obviously, Li Honghe won't care about his life or death. At least at the beginning, that's what he planned to do. Wang Tianzong's mouth twitched, and he couldn't say anything for a while. That was indeed what Li Honghe could do. But Wang Tianzong didn't think there was anything wrong with it. If the two exchanged places and the Wang family of Beihai needed to rise again, he would also choose to sacrifice his most outstanding junior in exchange for the glory of the entire Wang family of Beihai. That was indeed the last resort. But Qin Weibai was Li Tianlan's woman. How could she accept the so-called helplessness? She hated Li Honghe and the Li family. That was the most normal emotion. And it was a strong hatred that couldn't be dissolved. Wang Tianzong thought silently. Suddenly he thought of something and said subconsciously, "No." He stared at Qin Weibai, narrowed his eyes and whispered, "Li Tianlan now has the dragon vein. If all his luck was supported by the aura of death, then how could he bear the dragon vein that was full of life force?" Qin Weibai was indifferent. Her eyes were reluctant and desolate. Death Qi was a tribulation. 3 years ago, as Great Master Wu Wei's adopted daughter, she was ready for everything when she asked to see Great Master Wu Wei in linen. Great Master Wu Wei let Li Tianlan's life destiny return to chaos. The so-called Death Qi and the so-called tribulation were all born by Qin Weibai. That was why she brought the Samsara Palace to destruction. Li Tianlan had made a great breakthrough and had the dragon vein. She was going to face the tribulation for Li Tianlan. Qin Weibai took a deep breath and turned to leave the hall. She had no intention of negotiating. Because no matter what Wang Tianzong said, she couldn't agree. "You also hate the Wang family of Beihai," Wang Tianzong said calmly behind her. "Why?" Qin Weibai stopped in her tracks. She turned to look at Wang Tianzong with a strange look in her eyes. "Dongqing Huangtu was in Kunlun," she smiled and said. "He was stabbed to death by a woman, but there was another woman who participated in the siege." Wang Tianzong's eyes twitched. He looked at Qin Weibai seriously and didn't speak. "Samsara really can't hold on for long," Qin Weibai said. "But before Samsara disappears, we still have enough ability to give all of you a real surprise." "You're courting death," Wang Tianzong said slowly. "Why bother? What do you want?" "A new era." Qin Weibai turned and moved forward. Her voice echoed in the World Palace, and it was as loud as a phoenix. "A new era that doesn't need any great family. In any era, the Wang family of Beihai will be the greatest family." Wang Tianzong narrowed his eyes. "So?" Qin Weibai's clear and soft voice kept echoing in the World Palace. Chapter 318. This secret meeting could be said to have parted on bad terms. Wang Tianzong didn't get what he wanted. Instead, he confirmed the hostile relationship between the Samsara Palace and the Wang family of Beihai. Qin Weibai had already left. However, her voice still seemed to reverberate in the ancient and solemn space of the World Palace. "All of you should go to hell forever." She said this very calmly, very lightly. He wasn't gnashing his teeth, nor was he hysterical. It was as if he was talking about the most ordinary thing. It was calm and peaceful. Extreme calmness was a kind of madness in itself. Wang Tianzong could feel the determination behind the calmness. That was hatred. A hatred that would not rest until one of them was dead. The calmer it was, the more intense it was. Wang Tianzong was a little annoyed and even had some killing intent. But he still did not stop her from leaving. He stood in front of the World Palace, watching the graceful Qin Weibai get in the car and flaming fire start the car. The black Mercedes-Benz retreated in the silent night. It went down the mountain and gradually became a little red dot, becoming more and more blurry. Wang Tianzong was motionless. He was thinking over every detail of tonight's meeting. Although both sides talked a lot during this meeting, it didn't last long. But Wang Tianzong thought for a long time. Even longer than the time of this conversation. It was windy on Mount Dibbing late at night. The wind with the fishy and salty smell of the deep sea blew over. The stifling feeling faded a little, and the flowers and trees in front of the World Palace swayed with the wind lazily. Wang Tianzong recalled the conversation just now and gradually calmed down. He would not let anything interfere with his judgment, nor would he make any decisions when he was upset. Most of the conversation began to fade from his mind. Wang Tianzong's eyes became deep again. There was a plum tree in front of the World Palace. The plum tree was not very tall, but its loose branches were extremely verdant. The species of the plum tree was black amber cultivated by the Star Nation. It usually matured in late July and had an extremely fragrant and sweet taste. This was the only tree in front of the World Palace. Planted among the flowers and grass, it stood out from the crowd. Wang Tianzong walked out of the hall and looked at Li Shu in front of him with no expression. He was silent. The wind grew stronger. The wind died down again. The lights on Mount Dibing gradually turned off. Thunder rumbled in the starry sky. The World Palace was silent. Standing in front of the plum tree, Wang Tianzong was as silent as a statue. It's going to rain. A gentle voice rang out behind her. Summer Solstice appeared beside Wang Tianzong. She looked at her husband, and her lively eyes were filled with worry. Let's go back first? Wang Tianzong shook his head and was still thinking. It didn't go well. Summer Solstice asked. Wang Tianzong agreed and said with a smile, "It's worse than before. I shouldn't have invited her. It doesn't make sense." He never minded telling his wife about the general trend of the dark world and his own plans. Summer Solstice was lively and simple, even a little silly. She didn't care about anything in the dark world at all. Wang Tianzong didn't expect his wife to analyze anything for him. He did. She listened. She had forgotten. That alone was enough. Samsara Palace. Summer Solstice frowned. She was simple, but she was not really heartless. During this time, Wang Tianzong became more and more silent. She saw it and vaguely knew the reason. This was also what she didn't understand. Why does the Samsara Palace give you so much pressure? Summer Solstice asked. Because of the master of Samsara Palace. Wang Tianzong's eyes were deep and gloomy. Summer Solstice knew the master of Samsara Palace. Not because the master of Samsara Palace defeated Gu Xingyun, but because that woman once took the 12 super masters of Samsara directly to Mount Dibing and escaped unscathed. Is she very strong? Summer Solstice's eyes were a little confused. Wang Tianzong was silent for a while, as if he was also thinking about the question he should have known the answer to. How was the combat capability of the master of Samsara Palace? Not strong. Wang Tianzong thought for a while and shook his head. But also very strong. Summer Solstice looked at Wang Tianzong quietly. From the point of view of the first on the divine list, the master of Samsara Palace was indeed not strong, although she now ranked very high on the divine list. In terms of pure combat capability, the master of Samsara Palace should not be a match for Gu Xingyun. Wang Tianzong said, Gu Xingyun failed 3 years ago because of his carelessness. He didn't expect that the master of Samsara Palace would use the 10th unique domain of Kunlun City. If the two meet now, Gu Xingyun will win. Although he will pay a great price, he is indeed a little stronger than the master of Samsara Palace. Then, Summer Solstice opened her mouth. Gu Xingyun was slightly stronger than the master of Samsara Palace. So even if he defeated the master of Samsara Palace, he would also pay a great price. Wang Tianzong was stronger than Gu Xingyun. Summer Solstice didn't think that her husband needed to pay any price to defeat Gu Xingyun. The gap between the first and the fifth on the divine list seemed not big, but the subtle distance was also huge. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai coexisted in Zhongzhou State, not because their martial arts strength could compete with the Wang family of Beihai, but because of the general trend, politics, power schemes, balance, and many other things. Among the superpowers, the strength of the leader was very important, but it was not so important that it could decide life and death. Otherwise, the Wang family of Beihai would have unified the world long ago. But the Samsara Palace was different. The Samsara Palace developed extremely fast, but they had no foundation so far. The master of Samsara Palace was everything. Once she died, the Samsara Palace would be completely destroyed. If the master of Samsara Palace was slightly inferior to Gu Xingyun, why did Wang Tianzong pay so much attention to her? It's true if it's just about winning or losing, Wang Tianzong said. Wang Tianzong said. He remembered the hidden sword that the master of Samsara Palace used when she climbed Mount Dibing. Her strength lies not in her comprehensive combat capability, but in that sword stroke. Wang Tianzong narrowed his eyes, which were a little cold. Any expert had the means to fight back in a desperate situation. But the sword stroke of the master of Samsara Palace gave Wang Tianzong a completely different feeling. The opponent's comprehensive combat capability was not so top-notch, but the feeling that the sword stroke brought him at that time made him feel a near-fatal threat. It was a fierce sword stroke that ignored life and death. The master of Samsara Palace would definitely die when the sword stroke came out, but Wang Tianzong didn't think that he could take it unscathed. He would be seriously injured. And it would be an absolute serious injury. This sword stroke was the key to the master of Samsara Palace's ranking at the top of the divine list. She was not strong, but she was also very strong. Just because of this? Summer Solstice's eyes were a little confused. That's one reason, Wang Tianzong whispered. The main reason is that she is a lunatic. A woman with an extreme and crazy personality controlled that sword stroke. Everyone would be afraid and pay attention to it. Qin Weibai said that the Samsara Palace would give everyone a surprise even when it couldn't hold on. Wang Tianzong didn't doubt that. That sword stroke alone was enough to be a surprise for anyone. Wang Tianzong took a deep breath, took out a cigarette, and lit it. The phone suddenly rang. It sounded a little harsh in the silent night. Wang Tianzong took out his phone and looked at it. It was a call from Firmament. Firmament, an expert of the half-step invincible realm from the Wang family of Beihai. Even in the chaos of the dark world, he rarely took action. Only a few core figures of the Wang family of Beihai knew that Firmament had secretly entered Snow Country with some elites more than a year ago. Wang Tianzong answered the phone. Your Majesty. Firmament didn't talk nonsense and went straight to the point. His voice was a little tired and complicated. He whispered, I just got the news that the Vladimir family has been exterminated. Even with Wang Tianzong's wisdom, he couldn't help but tremble when he heard the news. Vladimir. In the language of the Snow Country, it meant to possess the world. The Vladimir family did not own the world, but to some extent, it could be said that they own the Snow Country. As one of the 6 oligarchs of Snow Empire, every important figure of the Vladimir family held an important position in Snow Empire. Perhaps they could call the wind and summon the rain in different domains. However, the news from the Heavenly Dome realm was that their race had been exterminated. It wasn't just the clan leader who was killed. Instead, the entire clan was annihilated. For such a deep-rooted oligarch family to disappear in the Snow Empire, even before daybreak, the entire Snow Empire would completely fall into chaos. Who did it? Wang Tianzong said seriously. At present, all the clues point to the Polar Ground Alliance. It looks like an internal strife of the Polar Ground Alliance, but this is too exaggerated. Firmament said with a bitter smile. Wang Tianzong remained silent. The internal strife of the Polar Ground Alliance had reached the point where the Vladimir family had been wiped out, which was indeed exaggerated. Even in the Polar Ground Alliance, the Vladimir family was one of the core components and played an important role in the alliance. If it was just internal strife, it would at most be a matter of changing the patriarch, and the whole family would be destroyed. This was enough to shake the foundation of the Polar Ground Alliance. None of the parties involved in the internal strife would do this. The current dominator of the Polar Ground Alliance was codenamed Tyrant. He ranked 7th on the new divine list. He was Tyrant, but he was not a fool. The Samsara Palace took action. Wang Tianzong said in a low tone. He did not have the most direct evidence to prove that the Samsara Palace took action. However, some of the movements of the Samsara Palace in Snow Empire in the past 3 years were enough to support Wang Tianzong's speculation. 3 years ago, he had invited Tyrant to the Wang family of Beihai as a guest. Tyrant came as promised. Wang Tianzong had reminded him to pay attention to the Samsara Palace, but Tyrant was soon distracted by the civil strife that broke out in the Polar Ground Alliance. In the past 3 years, the Polar Ground Alliance had been in turmoil, but it was still under control. The extermination of the Vladimir family was definitely the first fangs that the Samsara Palace showed. In the dark world, this would also be the clearest signal, because it meant that the civil strife of the Polar Ground Alliance had been completely out of control. It meant that the Polar Ground Alliance was in danger. If the Polar Ground Alliance completely collapsed, who would be the new king in the entire Snow Empire? and even the dark world of Eastern Europe. At the very least, now that the situation was unclear, any superpower would have a chance. Wang Tianzong was short of breath. He didn't even have to think about the next scene. No one was willing to give up such a big benefit. The dark world was in chaos. Now the Polar Ground Alliance was in danger. It would not stop the chaos in the dark world. Instead, it would give everyone a reason to fight to the death. And the entire Snow Empire would become the battlefield for all the forces in the dark world. Wang Tianzong could not stop all this. It was impossible for him not to participate in this matter. Snow Empire was too close to Beihai Province. The major forces were fighting in Snow Empire, which was definitely a threat to the Wang family of Beihai that could not be ignored. More importantly, in the eyes of the major forces, the Wang family of Beihai, which was very close to Snow Empire, was also a threat that could not be ignored. Wang Tianzong suddenly found that the situation of the Wang family of Beihai was so urgent. He still had a lot of things to do. Li Honghe did not die. Li Tianlan did not die. The cooperation with Kunlun City had not officially begun. Now Snow Empire, the largest country in the world, had become a battlefield again. If this was the goal of the Samsara Palace, then all this would not be a coincidence. Wang Tianzong took a deep drag on the cigarette. In the chaos, his eyes were calmer than usual. They were cold and rational without any emotion. I got it. He held his mobile phone. Wait and see. Don't stand out. I'll send someone there. When I solve the matter of Zhongzhou State, I'll go there myself. Okay. Firmament's voice was excited. In the time of one sentence, Wang Tianzong's eyes had become calm and determined. Wang Tianzong hung up the phone and looked at the plum tree in front of him. At the beginning of July, the tree was already full of fruits. Although they were not completely ripe, the color had turned into a rich purple. Wang Tianzong reached out and picked a fruit. He wiped it casually and put it in his mouth. The unripe fruit was a little sour. However, Wang Tianzong ate very seriously and swallowed all the bitterness into his stomach little by little. It's sour. After saying that, he threw away the core of the fruit. His movement was very light. But the trajectory of the core was straight as a line and instantly penetrated the whole fruit tree. There was no sword intent in front of the World Palace. However, the lush fruit tree suddenly exploded in an instant. Branches, tree trunks, tree roots, everything was sent flying into the sky. A slight wind blew over. The messy flying fruit tree disappeared quietly. A deep pit on the ground became the only trace of the existence of the fruit tree. Summer Solstice stared blankly at the plum tree turning into ashes in the air. She still remembered the scene when this fruit tree was planted in front of the World Palace. At that time, she was still a child. Wang Tianzong was also a child. Li Guangtu was also a child. At that time, Li Honghe was still the god of war of Zhongzhou State and Uncle Li for these children. It was a spring. Uncle Li, Uncle Wang, and several top figures of the Wang family of Beihai were in the World Palace. Wang Tianzong, who was still a child, and Summer Solstice were playing in front of the World Palace. Wang Tianzong took a bite of a fruit in his hand. He said, "It's sour." So he threw the fruit out and threw it to the front door of the World Palace. Uncle Li came out from the door and caught the fruit thrown by Wang Tianzong. So there was a plum tree in front of the World Palace. The plum tree planted by Uncle Li. Over the years, except for the name engraved on the stone of Formidable Person on the stage of Formidable Person, this plum tree was the last trace left by Li Honghe in Mount Dibbing. Now this trace, or friendship, had been completely crushed by the sword intent and turned into nothingness. The plum tree was gone. It seemed that there was no need for Uncle Li to exist. Summer Solstice's eyes were a little sad. Wang Tianzong turned around with a calm face and reached out to rub her hair. Go to sleep first. I'll go to the lab and then go down the mountain. Go down the mountain. Summer Solstice's delicate body trembled. Go to Kunlun first, and then Linen. Wang Tianzong's tone was calm. There was not much time. He had made up his mind and did not want to delay. Summer Solstice was silent. She wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Samsara Palace, Linen Li Tianlan, Snow Country. Great changes had taken place in the dark world. Even Wang Tianzong did not seem to be sure this time. Otherwise, he did not need to go to the lab to refine the immortality potion. At the critical moment, it was equivalent to Wang Tianzong's life. Be careful. I'll wait for you at home, Summer Solstice whispered. Her eyes were a little worried. Don't worry. Wang Tianzong smiled and said, when I come back, nothing will happen. He walked past Summer Solstice. He passed by the pit where the plum tree used to be. Wang Tianzong stepped over it. The sword energy all over the sky suddenly fell from above. It pierced into the ground. The hard ground began to tremble, and the pit spread rapidly. The ground was collapsing, turning into a round pit with a radius of tens of meters. Water light emerged from the bottom of the pit. It looked like a small pond. All traces of the plum tree completely disappeared. Plant some lotus flowers, Wang Tianzong said. I can eat the lotus seed soup you made next year. Wang Tianzong stayed in the lab until late at night. When he left the lab, there was a crystal pendant around his neck. The pendant was crystal clear and had a strange shape. It looked like a small whistle. A few drops of dark purple liquid flowed slowly in the whistle, dazzling. He returned to the World Palace. Summer Solstice had left. The water light in the small pond that he stepped out became more and more obvious. Wang Tianzong glanced at it casually and walked into the World Palace again. The gate slowly closed behind him. It was dark in the hall. Wang Tianzong did not turn on the light. He just walked step by step into the depths of the hall in the dark. He climbed the steps and returned to the white jade throne, which symbolized the supreme power of the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong's expression was cautious. He touched an imperceptible mechanism behind the back of the chair. The white jade throne began to move forward. There was no sound. A hidden passage was exposed under the throne. Wang Tianzong walked in with a calm face. The throne closed up once more, and the moment it did so, a soft cracking sound could be heard. So the light in the hidden passage was on. The light was dim. Wang Tianzong walked in the dark passage for a long time. A bronze door appeared in front of him. The bronze door glowed with a gloomy luster under the light. 2 doors, 2 badges. The door panel on the left was carved with the family emblem of the Wang family of Beihai's firmament and the sea. On the door panel on the right, there were some messy carvings of lines. The seemingly irregular lines were indescribably cold and weird. The chaotic lines gathered in the middle and formed a vague outline. There were 2 irregular diamonds above the outline, like a pair of eyes. Devil's eye. 2 eyes. The left eye represented passage, and the right eye represented destruction. Wang Tianzong reached out and touched the left eye. The center of the door panel was sunken, and a screen appeared. Wang Tianzong entered the password. Light shot out of the screen and swept through Wang Tianzong's body. Then with a click, the bronze door opened to both sides. A piercing cold came to his face. The world behind the door was still a narrow and dark passage, but it was extremely cold and dry. Wang Tianzong walked along the passage for a long time before he came to another door. The same procedure. The second door opened. The world behind the door was an ultra-low temperature hall. The temperature was even close to -50 degrees Celsius. Wang Tianzong's breath was filled with white cold air. He silently scanned the hall in front of him. The hall was huge. Ice coffins were the only things in the hall. The ice coffins were lined up in rows, and there were hundreds of ice coffins. However, most of the ice coffins were empty. Only a small number of ice coffins contained figures that seemed to be in a deep sleep. In terms of location, this hall should be dozens of meters below the stage of formidable person of the Wang family of Beihai. The figures in a small number of ice coffins were the most hidden power of the Wang family of Beihai. The Devil Troop. Wang Tianzong stood in front of the door. There was a row of buttons in front of the door, like switches. Wang Tianzong reached out and gently touched the button in front of him. In the extremely low temperature, his mind became calmer and calmer. To refine the immortality potion. To wake up the devil troop that almost never appeared. It was all to cope with the coming chaos. If he had convinced Qin Weibai, all this might not have been needed. But Qin Weibai refused him. She hated the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong frowned. Because of Dongqing Huangtu. Because of that year. He looked at the button in front of him and said to himself with no expression, Who is Dongqing Huangtu? His finger pressed down. The button vibrated gently. There was a buzzing ultrasonic sound that normal people could not hear in the hall. The sound wave swept through the hall. The specific wave band surrounded the ice coffins closest to Wang Tianzong in a state invisible to the naked eye. It was silent. In the ice coffins, the figures that seemed to be sleeping opened their eyes one after another. They raised their stiff palms and opened the ice coffins in their hands. The figures in the ice coffins sat up with ice chips all over their bodies. Everyone looked at Wang Tianzong in silence. The scene was weird and horrifying. Wang Tianzong passed by the ice coffins in front of him. The activation password corresponding to each person sounded in the hall, steady and clear. Silence. Shadow. Frenzy. Autumn water. Amber. Wrath sea. Calm lake. Doomsday. Slaughter. Divine sword. Divine punishment. Death. Wang Tianzong's clear voice kept echoing in the hall. The Devil Troop was one of the most mysterious foundations of the Beihai force. Every soldier had to go back to sleep here after being transformed. Their strength was unparalleled. But the overly powerful force put their bodies on the verge of collapse. So most of the time, they slept at the lowest temperature. They were different from the Terracotta Army of Zhongzhou State and the Kusanagi force of East Island. Their combat effectiveness was extremely powerful, but they could not be exposed to the outside world for a long time because they could not control their power. So the Terracotta Army and the Kusanagi force became super transformed soldiers that could be awakened at any time with a password, and could be reused at any time. The Devil Troop became the foundation of the Wang family of Beihai and the cruelest and most luxurious, consumable. Wang Tianzong looked at the figure sitting up in the ice coffin, and said the last password with a calm look. Extinction. 12 passwords. The bodies of the 12 soldiers shook at the same time. It was still silent, but everyone's eyes were focused on Wang Tianzong. The password is correct. A somewhat mechanical voice sounded. It seemed that they had slept for so long that they were still a little slow for a while. What's the matter? Please go to Snow Country. Wang Tianzong's tone was calm. A sudden clap of thunder resounded over the North Sea province. The thunder covered the entire Mount Dibing, and the huge sound wave poured into the ground. The storm that had been brewing for a long time poured down and fluttered wildly. Huge waves rose under the stage of Formidable Person and hit Mount Dibing. In the Devil Hall, dozens of meters underground, there was only the sound of the violent tide, except for the dull thunder. The tide was endless. The stiff and slow voice sounded again. We set off now. They were the most luxurious consumables of the Wang family of Beihai. From the moment they were awakened, they already had an unchangeable fate. The 12 people walked out of the ice coffin in turn, and walked to the exit of the hall. Wang Tianzong stood behind them and bowed deeply. In the huge tide, his voice spread in the hall, calm and respectful. Chapter 319. Second update. It was drizzling in Huating. The dense rain was like a transparent silk thread filling the sky and the earth, falling down in disorder and order, soaking the whole city and the Huangpu River in the city. The river was smooth. The rain fell on the river, bringing tiny ripples all over the river. The light rain was leisurely and gentle. In the almost carefree rain curtain, the whole city was with a misty and hazy leisure. A boat was floating on the river. It was the smallest sightseeing boat on the Huangpu River. The boat was going from west to east. Someone was sitting in the bow, quietly drinking tea. Looking down from a high place, the city in the rain, the river in the city, the boat on the river, and the people on the boat were quiet and beautiful, like a very simple and elegant picture in the bustling city. Through the clean and bright floor-to-ceiling window, Li Tianlan watched quietly. A woman was sitting on the sofa behind him. The woman was in her 30s. She looked ordinary but elegant. She was wearing a black professional suit. Her smile was elegant and polite, and she looked sincere and dignified. Li Tianlan stood with his back to her, looking at the rain outside the window. He seemed to be in a trance. This was the reception room on the top floor of the Flourishing Age Financial Group. Li Tianlan came here today to sign a cooperation agreement with Han Donglu on behalf of the East Emperor Palace. The woman sitting behind Li Tianlan was Han Donglu's secretary. Han Donglu was in a meeting. It was not that Han Donglu deliberately neglected Li Tianlan. It was said that the meeting started in the middle of the night and had not ended until now. Even Han Donglu's secretary came out of the conference room to receive Li Tianlan after Li Tianlan arrived. This was already a high degree of attention. "Mr. Li, the tea is getting cold," the secretary said with a chuckle. Li Tianlan waved his hand, turned back to look at the secretary and asked, "How long does Boss Han need?" "It should be very soon." The secretary looked at her watch and said with an impeccable smile, "Boss Han has ordered the legal department to draw up the contract. You can get the investment of the Flourishing Age Fund by noon today at the latest." Li Tianlan nodded and said yes. He had communicated with everyone in the East Emperor Palace. Everyone thought that they had no reason to refuse this investment. If any force wanted to develop, money might not be the most important, but it was absolutely the most basic. The East Emperor Palace, which was known as one of the four forces of the young generation, was now too monotonous. It had no more than 10 personnel, no various departments, no personal network and intelligence system of its own, and no economic source to support the continued development of the East Emperor Palace. It was not so much a force as a small group that might go their separate ways at any time. This wasn't a problem in the past. But graduation was coming. After the final maneuver, if the East Emperor Palace could win, it would become the new free force with the first place in both academies. At that time, various departments and institutions were indispensable. 1.5 billion sounded like a lot, but for any new force, it was not a huge sum of money. It could only be considered as a startup fund. The reason why Li Tianlan decided to accept Han Donglu's investment was because of the golden signboard of the Flourishing Age Fund. The Flourishing Age Jin and the Han family were the neutral families with the strongest capital in Zhongzhou State. As long as he got the initial investment, it meant that there would be more possibilities for him to cooperate with the Han family in the future. As long as Li Tianlan and the East Emperor Palace showed enough potential, the Han family's investment in the future would continue to increase. For the East Emperor Palace, sufficient funds represented a guarantee for rapid development. Moreover, as long as he led the East Emperor Palace through this maneuver, with the golden signboard of the Flourishing Age Fund, he would get more investment in the future. Even more than just money. The premise was that Li Tianlan was strong enough. Perhaps there were still many people who doubted Li Tianlan, who was ranked 9th on the divine list. But Li Tianlan was full of confidence. His strength was indeed not as strong as it was during the decisive battle in Tiandu. But his greater potential allowed him to have a broader future. After getting Han Donglu's investment, he didn't think that he would lose money, nor did he think that Han Donglu would lose money. He even felt that this was one of Han Donglu's most successful investments. Li Tianlan looked down at his watch. 9:50 a.m. He frowned. Just as he was about to speak, the secretary's cell phone rang. The secretary answered the phone, listened for a while, and then said yes. "Mr. Li, Boss Han has finished the meeting. He will come to meet you soon." The secretary stood up, and her smile grew softer. "Okay." Li Tianlan responded. As his eyes turned, through the glass of the reception room, he had seen a group of people coming out of the conference room. This was a team of about 20 people. Men and women from young to middle-aged, everyone's eyes flashed with excitement and solemnity. The whole team walked out of the conference room in a hurry. The calm and determined Han Donglu walked at the end. Han Xinyan, who looked quiet but was very tough, followed Han Donglu, one step behind. Another very young woman was walking side by side with Han Donglu. The two of them were talking about something calmly. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at them without saying a word. That was a young woman of at most 24 or 25 years old. The moment he saw her, Li Tianlan even felt that he saw Qin Weibai in a trance. She was slightly shorter than Qin Weibai. Her charm and appearance were a little inferior. But even if she was a little inferior, she was still extremely beautiful. The same sharpness, the same delicacy, the same confidence. The same but not the same. The woman standing next to Han Donglu was extremely arrogant. It was a kind of clear arrogance that seemed to look down on everyone. She was not cold, but because of the existence of this arrogance, she looked extremely indifferent. Indifference and arrogance were also confidence. She looked calm and walked side by side with Han Donglu. In terms of aura, she was even stronger than Han Donglu. In their sight, the woman walked out of the conference room, shook hands with Han Donglu, and then turned around. The team that walked out of the conference room first followed the woman and surrounded her to the elevator. A group of women walked past the guest room. Her figure suddenly stopped, and she turned to look at Li Tianlan in the reception room. The two looked at each other through the glass. Li Tianlan was indifferent and fearless. The woman turned around expressionlessly and continued to walk to the elevator. Her figure swayed, and her silver high-heeled shoes hit the ground. The clear sound seemed to fall on everyone's heart, with sharpness. Han Xinyan walked beside the woman and sent her downstairs. Han Donglu walked into the reception room. "Who is that?" Li Tianlan asked. "Why, do you have an idea?" Han Donglu sat on the sofa with a smile and waved his hand to signal the secretary to leave. "She's hostile to me," Li Tianlan said. Although they looked at each other for a moment, he could clearly perceive the sharpness in the other's eyes. "It's normal." Han Donglu smiled and cut open a cigar. "You brought so much pressure to my fiancé, and you even dragged my sister-in-law into my car. Why should I be calm with you?" "Fiancé?" Li Tianlan's eyes flashed and he sat opposite Han Donglu. Han Donglu handed the cigar to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan shook his head and took out a cigarette. "She is Wang Xingxiao's fiancé and my partner this time." Han Donglu took a puff of the cigar. In the smoke, his voice was a little deep. "The first Miss Tang of the Wang family of Beihai, the future hostess of the Wang family of Beihai." Then, Li Tianlan was a little surprised. Thinking of the arrogant woman just now in Song Xiai, he asked, "What about Song Xiai? Even you can have more than one woman. Why can't Wang Shengxiao, Tang Shi and Song Xiai are the two most outstanding women of the young generation of the Wang family of Beihai. In some ways, they are even more outstanding than Wang Yuetong." Han Donglu said with a smile, "Especially Tang Shi. Compared with Song Xiai, who only appeared 2 or 3 years ago, Tang Shi was trained as the economic helmsman of the Wang family of Beihai when she was very young. The Wang family of Beihai has been passed down for nearly 10 generations and hundreds of years. You can't imagine how big their industry is. Now Tang Shi is in charge of all the industries. Amazing." Li Tianlan took a puff of the cigarette and said softly, "There were geniuses in the field of martial arts. There were also geniuses in the field of finance and business." "Really amazing." Han Donglu nodded. In Snow Country, the Polar Ground Alliance is in civil strife. Last night, an oligarch family was completely destroyed. Snow Country is in turmoil. Tang Shi came here today to join the Flourishing Age Fund to target Snow Country's currency. What about investment? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. If the Wang family of Beihai and the Flourishing Age Fund joined hands to attack the currency, they would have to mobilize a lot of cash. That's a different matter. Han Donglu shook his head. "I can give you 1.5 billion at any time. It doesn't matter." The secretary left and came back. She was followed by a shrewd middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes. The man put the folder in his hand beside Han Donglu, bent down and said, "Boss Han, the contract has been drafted. It will take effect after you sign it." Han Donglu nodded casually, pushed the contract to Li Tianlan, and said, "This is the contract between us. Everyone in the East Emperor Palace has to sign it. 1.5 billion will be in place before this afternoon. Take a look. If there is no doubt, I am the first investor of the East Emperor Palace." Li Tianlan opened the folder. The contract was thick, because there were many contracts. A single one was actually 2 pages. It emphasized that the Flourishing Age Financial Group occupied 10% of the interests of the East Emperor Palace. At the same time, it emphasized the power that the Flourishing Age Financial Group had in the sphere of influence of the East Emperor Palace in the future. In addition, all of them were supplementary investments of the Flourishing Age Financial Group to the East Emperor Palace. For example, if Li Tianlan could survive the final maneuver, the Flourishing Age Financial Group would invest another 500 million. If the East Emperor Palace could win the final maneuver, the investment scale would be increased to 3 billion. What made Li Tianlan the most painful was that the F*King contract even stated that if Li Tianlan could marry Dongqing Rushi or Wang Yuedong, the Flourishing Age Financial Group would increase the amount. Li Tianlan's mouth twitched as he read the contract. He could totally imagine the expressions of Li Beitian and the others after reading the contract. He put the contract away and said with a poker face, "No problem. The funds will be in place before this afternoon." Han Donglu said, "From now on, you are one of the investment targets of the Flourishing Age Financial Group. Within a certain range, the Flourishing Age Foundation will give you a certain degree of support, but it does not include the 6 groups in Zhongzhou State." Li Tianlan nodded. He could understand this support correctly, but aren't you afraid that the 6 groups will retaliate against you? Li Tianlan asked. After all, my identity is relatively sensitive. If the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City know that you invest in the East Emperor Palace, if they know, they know. Han Donglu said blandly, "So what? What I invest in now are all forces that have the hope of becoming an invincible realm expert in the future. It's a normal business behavior. The money is mine, and I'm willing to give it to you. It's not someone else's turn to talk nonsense." "They're not just talking nonsense," Li Tianlan said blandly. "You don't understand," Han Donglu said calmly. "Although the Han family has no invincible realm expert now, the power we have is not something that anyone can ignore. The Han family can rise, but the most difficult part was in the first few years. At that time, I had funds and means, but not enough power. I was like a child walking downtown with gold in his arms. At that time, there were indeed people who wanted to attack the Han family." "What did you do?" Li Tianlan asked. "Me?" A fierce look flashed in Han Donglu's eyes. "I directly set off a financial storm inside Zhongzhou State, from Hong Kong to Huading. That was the battle for the Han family to gain a foothold in Zhongzhou State. The Wang family of Beihai, the giant group, and ourselves all suffered heavy losses. But since then, there have been fewer people who dare to attack us. After that, the Han family opened the way with money and invested in the 6 groups. After so many years, I have friends in the 6 groups. When I need it, I can make my voice heard in the 6 groups at the same time. This is my power. I throw my money out. This power never exists, but it is everywhere, just like the 7th group." Li Tianlan said blandly. "A neutral group? There's no such saying." Han Donglu shook his head with a smile. "But the Han family really doesn't have to succumb to anyone's will, unless we are willing." Li Tianlan nodded. Absolute wealth could make one fearless indeed. The Han family did not have an invincible realm expert, but they had money. If Han Donglu really went crazy and threw hundreds of billions of yuan to buy a person's life, not to mention ordinary killers, most invincible realm experts would be willing to work for Han Donglu for the sake of this huge amount of wealth, and take that person's head back. So, Li Tianlan patted the folder on the table. "Happy cooperation," he said. "Happy cooperation." Han Donglu reached out and shook hands with Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan took the folder and walked to the window. The rain outside the window was getting heavier. Standing at a height of 100 floors and looking down, Li Tianlan could still see everything on the river clearly. The ripples on the river continued to spread, layer upon layer. The small boat on the river was floating quietly. It was still raining. The people on the boat were still drinking tea. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. His heart gradually calmed down. After signing this contract, the East Emperor Palace would have a real start after the maneuver was over. The Li family would also have a real start. "Although the investment is a little less," Li Tianlan said, "but I still want to thank you, Boss Han." Han Donglu smiled and said calmly, "It's already a lot. I don't want to lose money in vain. After the maneuver is over, I may continue to invest more." "You will." Li Tianlan looked at the rain outside the window and said softly. Han Donglu smiled and said nothing. Li Tianlan would not know what the 1.5 billion Boss Han, who kept saying that he did not want to lose money in vain, gave him. The Flourishing Age Fund did invest in the East Emperor Palace, Phantom Palace, 3,000 World, and Jile Mountain. But what Li Tianlan did not know was that the 3 billion Han Donglu invested in 3,000 World had given out less than 1 billion so far. Li Tianlan had an investment of 1.5 billion. What he got was 1.5 billion. 3,000 World had an investment of 3 billion, but it had received less than 1 billion so far. 3 billion was a lot. But there was an essential difference between installment investment and one-time investment. It's good that you have confidence. Han Donglu smiled and patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder. It's good to be confident, but I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't look down on Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hanshan. And don't look down on Jiang Shangyu. The boat in the river had drifted to the opposite side of the Flourishing Age building. Li Tianlan shook his head and said, I won't look down on anyone. Han Donglu nodded and looked at Li Tianlan. He suddenly said, Are you under a lot of pressure? I'm fine. Although he felt that Han Donglu's attitude was a little strange, Li Tianlan remained calm. Han Donglu looked at Li Tianlan quietly. He looked at Li Tianlan, who was calm and didn't even show any emotion. He didn't know Li Tianlan very well. But after several meetings, he could vaguely feel the depression in his heart. As the inheritor of the Li family, there was only one way in his life. Now he had passed the starting point. In front of him was the Wang family of Beihai, the heir of Kunlun City. After that there might be the entire Wang family of Beihai, the entire Kunlun City, the Jiang family of South America, and more enemies. Such a life. Have you ever been happy? Han Donglu suddenly asked a meaningless question. Li Tianlan was silent for a long time. I have been happy, he said. Han Donglu smiled and pointed out of the window. He said meaningfully, When one day you can stand here justifiably, you will be really happy. He turned and walked to the door of the reception area. Li Tianlan stood there and looked out of the window. It was close to the highest point of Huading. Standing here and looking at the outside world, he was looking down and overlooking it. In the misty rain, the whole world seemed to be under his feet. Boss Han! Li Tianlan suddenly let out a cry. Han Donglu turned around in confusion. How about lending you another piece of glass? Li Tianlan reached out and gently swiped in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. Without a sound, the entire glass shattered. The sword in tent rose quietly and returned to nothingness with the glass fragments. Because there was no shelter in the sky hundreds of meters above, the cold wind and rain poured into the reception area instantly. Li Tianlan just stared at the boat in the river. He took a step forward and jumped directly from the building of Huading, which was even higher than the Oriental Pearl Tower. Han Xinyan, who had just walked into the conference room, exclaimed subconsciously. Li Tianlan's body rose into the air. It was not falling. It was shooting. The sky was gloomy, and the wind and rain were dark. Li Tianlan's body was like a sharp sword, tearing the whistling wind. He jumped down from the sky hundreds of meters above and went straight to the Huangpu River below. In the wind and rain, his white figure was like a flash of flowing light, with suppressed madness to the extreme. There was a boat on the Huangpu River. The tea drinker at the bow of the boat raised his head and looked at the sky. A white shadow appeared in the sky, bringing with it a downpour of wind and rain as it stepped onto the bow of the ship. Bang! Amidst the dull sound, the entire boat suddenly shook violently. At the same time, the figure drinking tea at the bow also shook. The boat swayed, but there were no waves at the bottom. The ripples continued to spread. All the waves seemed to be suppressed by the figure drinking tea at the bow. His face turned pale, and a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This appearance is really cool. He looked at Li Tianlan, who was falling from the sky, and said lightly. Li Tianlan stood at the bow of the boat and said lightly, How did you know I would be in the Shengshe building? Do you believe that I guessed it? Jiang Shangyu, who was drinking tea alone on the boat, looked at Li Tianlan with a smile. A trace of blood came out of the corner of his mouth. Boom! In an instant, with the boat as the center, the water within 100 meters of the Huangpu River suddenly boiled. A white wave rushed up to the sky almost violently, as if to overturn the whole river. Only the boat was still floating quietly. Jiang Shangyu on the boat picked up the teapot. The rain falling on the river gradually poured into the teapot. He flicked his fingers and lit the fire. The rain and the tea gradually became boiling hot. Jiang Shangyu boiled the river. Drink tea. Jiang Shangyu, who came and went like a ghost, poured a cup of tea for Li Tianlan and said with a smile, "We should have talked a long time ago. This place is just right." Chapter 320. Blood dripped down from the corner of Jiang Shangyu's mouth and fell on his arm. Jiang Shangyu's smile was calm and peaceful. At that moment, Li Tianlan jumped down from the sky and landed on the deck. In fact, it was the second fight between Li Tianlan and Jiang Shangyu after 3 years. In other words, it was the first time and an inevitable fight. Jiang Shangyu wanted to cooperate with Li Tianlan. Since it was cooperation, he had to know Li Tianlan's strength. Li Tianlan also showed him his strength. Li Tianlan jumped in the air above 100 meters. With the help of the fierce impact, Li Tianlan seriously injured Jiang Shangyu the moment he landed. Jiang Shangyu originally wanted to suppress this violent force, but at the moment he attacked he did not feel the sword intent. All he could feel was power. Abundant, surging, and violent power that could completely crush everything. The absolute power directly broke through his suppression, went deep into the water, and finally exploded on the surface of the water. The calm water within a radius of 100 meters suddenly rose into the sky. The white waves rushed to the sky dozens of meters high. Before one wave subsided, another wave rose, covering the sky and the sun, like fireworks rising on the river. The injury went deep into the heart. Jiang Shangyu looked calm, and there was even some joy in his eyes. Li Tianlan was indeed a worthy target for cooperation. Li Tianlan walked to Jiang Shangyu, sat down and put aside the clean folder in his hand. Jiang Shangyu handed him a cup of tea. Li Tianlan drank it up. The tea was slightly bitter. "Say it." Li Tianlan didn't want to stay any longer. Jiang Shangyu didn't want him to stay any longer. He rubbed his chest and said with a bitter smile, "You hit me hard enough. You asked for it." Li Tianlan said indifferently. Jiang Shangyu smiled and said calmly, "I can know that you are in the Flourishing Age building. Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hanshan must have received the news." "I can't hide it," Li Tianlan said. He didn't want to hide it. The investment from the Flourishing Age Fund was supposed to be used in the shortest time to enhance his strength. At least in Li Tianlan's view. The news of the Flourishing Age Fund investing in East Emperor Palace was far less confidential than his meeting with Jiang Shangyu today. That was why he jumped down from the sky in such a high-profile manner, and seriously injured Jiang Shangyu in an instant. So even if the news was leaked, Jiang Shangyu had a serious injury as a reason. "How confident are you in the final maneuver?" Jiang Shangyu filled Li Tianlan's cup with tea again and asked softly. "I will win." Li Tianlan turned the teacup in his hand and said in a flat tone. He didn't say how confident he was, but these 3 simple words completely showed his absolute confidence. Jiang Shangyu narrowed his eyes. "My intuition tells me that I should trust you." Jiang Shangyu looked at Li Tianlan for a while and then smiled. But it's not a bad thing to know more about the enemy. He reached into his arms, took out a flash drive, and put it in front of Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan glanced at him. Some videos of Wang Shengxiao, Gu Hanshan, and Song Xiai in the past 3 years. Jiang Shangyu pointed at the flash drive. "This is very valuable information. I hope you can see something." "Wang Shengxiao," Li Tianlan said, seeming a little surprised. Li Tianlan was not surprised that Jiang Shangyu had information about Gu Hanshan. After all, the Jiang family was a wealthy family. In recent years, when they tried to unite with the Wang family of Beihai by marriage, they did not completely refuse Kunlun City's olive branch. Now Gu Hanshan entered the 3000 world, which represented further contact between the Jiang family and Kunlun City. It was not difficult for the Jiang family to get information about Gu Hanshan. But Wang Shengxiao was different. In the past 3 years, Wang Shengxiao had rarely been active in Zhongzhou State. Most of the time, he was wandering around the world or staying in Beihai province. Few people could see his moves, let alone battle videos. Li Tianlan had every reason to believe that Wang Shengxiao's battle videos could be sold at a sky-high price to any force. This is not the information the Jiang family got. Jiang Shangyu took a deep look at Li Tianlan. It was given to me by military counselor. Military counselor? Li Tianlan suddenly raised his eyebrows. Which military counselor? How many military counselors can there be in the dark world? Jiang Shangyu said softly. Naturally, it's the second supermaster of Samsara Palace. Samsara Palace, Jiang family. No, it should be Jiang Shangyu of Samsara Palace. Li Tianlan took a sip of tea silently. Until this moment, he suddenly realized that since he returned to the present, he had not had any form of contact with Samsara Palace. He returned to East Emperor Palace. But Bamboo Forest and Volcano of East Emperor Palace had left, and only Yu Donglai guarded the headquarters of East Emperor Palace. Military Counselor Saint did not appear. Qin Weibai seemed to have completely cut off contact with him. Li Tianlan knew this, but he instinctively did not want to think more about it. But when he saw Jiang Shangyu take out the USB, he realized that he was not the only one avoiding Samsara Palace. All the forces of Samsara Palace now seemed to be carefully avoiding him. So the other party would rather give him this invaluable battle information through Jiang Shangyu. What did military counselor say? Li Tianlan asked slowly. He didn't say anything. He just hoped that I could give you the USB. Jiang Shangyu shook his head. Li Tianlan was silent. Samsara Palace undoubtedly attached great importance to the Jiang family. Otherwise, they would not have found out the secret that Jiang Shangyu had the Heavenly King heart. Jiang Shangyu had the Heavenly King heart, which was equivalent to having a ticket to the gate of the invincible realm. If this secret had been exposed in the beginning, it might have been okay. But the Jiang family had always kept this secret. They tried to get close to the Wang family of Beihai. They tried to get close to Kunlun City. But this secret had never been exposed. Obviously, the father and son of the Jiang family had a big plan. In particular, Jiang Shangyu had been with Gu Hanshan. Once the news of his hidden strength was exposed, it was enough to cause extreme vigilance in Kunlun City. Gu Hanshan also had the Heavenly King heart. But Jiang Shangyu also had the exquisite bone when he had the Heavenly King heart. His aptitude was even slightly better than Gu Hanshan's. Why was he willing to submit to Gu Hanshan? Such a person followed Gu Hanshan firmly. Once he grew up, the threat to Kunlun City would be even greater than that of Li Tianlan and Wang Xingxiao. Gu Xingyan would never let go of this threat. Even if Jiang Shangyu was really loyal, Kunlun City might not really believe it. So Jiang Shangyu had a reason to cooperate with Li Tianlan from the beginning. Li Tianlan did not doubt this. But he also did not think that Jiang Shangyu had no other choice. He picked up the USB flash drive. Why don't you give this to the Wang family of Beihai? Li Tianlan looked into Jiang Shangyu's eyes. Kunlun City was developing extremely fast, but its foundation was slightly poor. At present, its foundation was not completely stable. So Gu Xingyan would be suspicious and would not let go of any threat. But the Wang family of Beihai was different. With the foundation of the Wang family of Beihai, it could completely accommodate Jiang Shangyu's Heavenly King heart. If Jiang Shangyu secretly approached Wang Shengxiao, the Wang family of Beihai would not completely refuse, even if it was not very welcome. Jiang Shangyu looked into Li Tianlan's eyes. There was a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Does it make sense? He asked. What can I get if I give it to the Wang family of Beihai? Even if I bring down Kunlun City, only the Wang family of Beihai will benefit. Maybe I will also get benefits, but it is just a bone that the Wang family of Beihai throws to me. The bone may be big and fragrant, but a bone is a bone. He leaned forward and stared at Li Tianlan. His pale face was flushed with excitement and paranoia. I'm not a dog. Why can't I eat meat? Yes, why? Li Tianlan asked faintly. Jiang Shangyu relaxed his body and leaned back. So I will choose you. Although it is not a good choice, it is the only choice. I chose the Wang family of Beihai, and it will only make me desperate in the end. But you are different. You have great potential, but your foundation is weak. If we cooperate and take down Kunlun City, at least I will have a chance to compete with you. Do you think the Samsara Palace can't see this? That's why military counselor came to me. Because the Samsara Palace knows that I can only cooperate with you now. And he didn't give this USB to you through others, such as the Dongqing clan or Sai City. Which also means that the Samsara Palace doesn't want our cooperation to be known by anyone else. The rain on the river poured into the teapot. The rain was boiling in the flame, and the fragrance of tea was overflowing. Jiang Shangyu smiled. He said softly, "It's good for me to hide in the dark." Li Tianlan lit a cigarette and took a deep breath. "Tell me about the cooperation," he said. "I can provide you with some internal information about Kunlun City. I can help you solve something inconvenient for you to show up while ensuring my own safety. What you need to do is very simple. Help me kill Gu Hanshan," Jiang Shangyu said with a smile. "Fair enough." Li Tianlan was expressionless. "It's fair enough." When Jiang Shangyu spoke, his eyes were very persistent and firm. That was a look that Li Tianlan was very familiar with. When he met Jiang Shangyu for the first time in East Island 3 years ago, he saw the persistence in his eyes. That was unwillingness. He didn't want to succumb to anyone. Or in other words, it was ambition. He would not succumb to Gu Hanshan. Similarly, Li Tianlan also knew that he would not succumb to him. Just like how Li Tianlan felt when he met Jiang Shangyu for the first time. They would not be friends. But as long as Kunlun City still existed and Gu Hanshan was still alive, their cooperation could be completely trusted. Common interests were more reliable than any friendship. That's it. Li Tianlan nodded and was ready to leave. It was really not suitable for the two of them to stay together for too long, even if he seriously injured Jiang Shangyu. "By the way, I want to remind you of one thing," Jiang Shangyu said lightly. "Be careful. Don't be too optimistic about your prospects. Even if you can win the final maneuver, it doesn't mean anything. Wang Tianzong and Gu Hanshan will be there in person during the maneuver. If you win, do you think those two will directly kill you?" Li Tianlan's movements paused. Senior Li's current state is very dangerous, but it's not unsolvable. Jiang Shangyu continued. Li Tianlan raised his head with a silent expression and glanced at Jiang Shangyu. "What do you want to say? Do you know the devil troop?" Jiang Shangyu hesitated and decided to tell Li Tianlan the news. The devil troop. Li Tianlan's pupils contracted imperceptibly. He had heard Bai Yuming mention this name once. It was said that Song Ci was related to the devil troop. But what was the devil troop? Whether it really existed or not, let alone Bai Yuming, perhaps even some core figures of the Wang family of Beihai were not very clear. "I've heard of it." Li Tianlan nodded slowly. "I've heard a legend," Jiang Shangyu said softly. "The devil troop does exist. Under normal circumstances, do you believe that 6 experts of the fire-flaming realm and the thunder-shocking realm can kill an invincible realm expert?" His voice was a little cold. "This is the devil troop of the Wang family of Beihai." Li Tianlan didn't overreact. He just frowned slightly. 6 experts of the fire-flaming realm, 6 experts of the thunder-shocking realm. An invincible realm expert could be besieged to death, but under normal circumstances, it was impossible for this lineup to kill an invincible realm expert. If this legend is true, they are definitely not ordinary experts of the fire-flaming realm and the thunder-shocking realm, Li Tianlan said. First of all, their combat effectiveness will be far beyond their realm. Second, their defensive power has at least reached the level where they can withstand the attack of an invincible realm expert. At least they can withstand one attack of an invincible realm expert. Then there is a strong vitality and recovery ability. This is not enough. Jiang Shangyu's face was a little gloomy. This can only let them get close to an invincible realm expert at most. It's really not enough. Li Tianlan nodded. So the key to the main problem is the attack power of the devil troop. The attack power they burst out in an instant is absolutely beyond imagination. No matter how strong they are only in the fire-flaming realm and the thunder-shocking realm, unless all of them have the wind and thunder veins. Jiang Shangyu shook his head and seemed to disagree. Without the wind and thunder veins, it's not impossible for them to withstand more powerful power, but the price is a little high, Li Tianlan said. If their power all breaks through the limit of what they can bear, 12 people can still kill an invincible realm expert. Jiang Shangyu was suddenly shocked. If their power all breaks through the limit of what they can bear, that means they can only fight one battle at most. If they go all out, they can only hit one blow, Li Tianlan said. But that blow is far beyond the power of the thunder-shocking realm and the fire-flaming realm. And such a blow will destroy their own bodies first. To kill the enemy, first kill yourself. Li Tianlan's tone became more and more flat. So, they are probably consumables. This should be the nature of the devil troop. But the Wang family of Beihai can't have a lot of such consumables. They can't have so many resources. Even if they don't have a lot, it should be enough to deal with Senior Li. Jiang Shangyu said flatly. Is Wang Tianzong willing? Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. For such a wealthy family, how can they not be willing? The key is whether Wang Tianzong feels threatened or not. Jiang Shangyu said. In fact, they are still too hesitant. If I were Gu Xingyun or Wang Tianzong, or Gu Xingyun and Wang Tianzong were my father, I would not hesitate to gather my strength and completely destroy the Li family. Even if I have to pay a high price, it is worth it. Your father is not Wang Tianzong or Gu Xingyun. Li Tianlan said calmly. Yes. Jiang Shangyu laughed. So you are really lucky. Li Tianlan stood up. What's your plan? Jiang Shangyu asked. I'm going to Linen. Li Tianlan said. I'm going now. Be careful. Jiang Shangyu said. At least now you are dead, which is not good for me. If you can survive the final maneuver. He poured a cup of tea in front of himself and Li Tianlan and said with a smile. Then from now on, Zhongzhou State will be the world of you, me and Wang Shengxiao. He stood up with the teacup and handed a cup of tea to Li Tianlan. Tea instead of wine. A toast to our country in the future. Situd Songyue was enjoying the snow. The snow in Mount Taibai remained unchanged all the year round. Whether it was howling with the wind or standing still with the wind, the continuous mountains were always pure white. A pure mountain. A pure city. It was so pure that there was no sorrow or joy. Without sorrow or joy, it was ruthlessness. Therefore, Sai City was the city of assassins. Situd Songyue liked it here. She liked to see the snow spread from her feet to thousands of miles away. It was white as if the end of the world was covered in snow, boundless and without any filth. Therefore, she rarely went down the mountain. With her, Sai City was the real Sai City. The wind and snow swirled above Mount Taibai, whistling and gathering like a tornado. Situd Songyue sat in front of the Taibai temple of Sai City, watching the snow gathered and blown away by the wind. Her eyes were tranquil and gentle. Tribulation, who had returned to Mount Taibai, came over from the other side. He was holding a mobile phone that looked a little old in the outside world. In the cold wind, he sat down beside Situd Songyue, handed the mobile phone to her, and whispered, a text message from Drifting Cloud. 3 years ago, after tribulation broke through to the invincible realm, the high-level officials of Zhongzhou State already had the voice to give Sai City greater responsibility. Greater responsibility meant greater power. Sai City now had 2 invincible realm experts and a murderous weapon. No one would think that they could not afford these. But such a voice was just a voice now. And it had not become a reality for the time being. Gu Xingyun reformed the special warfare system. Now it had been 3 years. But the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters was still a pilot, and had not been promoted throughout Zhongzhou State. This was also the best reason for Kunlun City to restrict Sai City. The reform was still groping, so it was not suitable to give Sai City a clear position. In the past 3 years, since tribulation came back from Sai City, only 2 people went out. They were Cool Breeze and Drifting Cloud, known as the double walls of Sai City. Cool Breeze was now the director of the political department of the Sky Academy. Drifting Cloud entered Yuzhou, and served as the first deputy director of the Yuzhou Special Operations Bureau. These 2 now represented all the forces of Sai City outside the northeast of Zhongzhou State. Situd Songyue took the mobile phone from tribulation. The screen of the mobile phone was open, and there was only one sentence on it. Wang Tianzong has arrived in Kunlun City. Situd Songyue looked at the mobile phone with deep eyes. In the past 2 months, this is the second time Wang Tianzong has gone to Kunlun City. Tribulation said in a flat tone. Situd Songyue nodded and sighed. The first time was to test Kunlun City's determination, and to release its attitude. The second time, There is no doubt that the cooperation has been confirmed. Tribulation's tone was cold. Situt Songyue returned the mobile phone to Tribulation. There was a moment of silence. Do you think they've forgotten about me? In the silent wind and snow, Situt Songyue suddenly asked. Tribulation didn't speak, thinking that it was not that the world had forgotten Sai City, but that Sai City had never been remembered. Since the hidden god of Zhongzhou State in Sai City was hidden from the world, why should he be remembered? The hidden god had never been remembered. The relationship between the hidden god and the Li family naturally didn't need to be cared about. Even if Li Tianlan was now the young governor of Sai City. They are afraid. Situt Songyue continued. The current Tianlan makes them afraid. Tianlan is now the young governor of Sai City. Tribulation said blandly. We should do something. I'll go. Situt Songyue said. Tribulation was suddenly shocked. He turned his head and looked at his sister seriously. Are you going to Huiding? No, it's Linen. Situt Songyue's tone was as calm as water. As long as Senior Li is still there, Tianlan will be fine. Wang Tianzong doesn't have to enter Kunlun City twice just to deal with Tianlan. They want to kill Senior Li. Perhaps Li Tianlan was so powerful that Wang Tianzong and Gu Xingyin felt threatened. But a threat was just a threat. As long as Li Honghe was killed, the threat of Li Tianlan could be wiped out at will. So she wanted to protect Li Tianlan. She had to protect Li Honghe first. That was the order that must not be messed up. Situt Songyue reached out her hand. Her hand was slender and white. A dark purple ring was put on her hand. The ring flickered gently and emitted a strange light in the snow. Situt Songyue took off the ring and placed it in her palm. The light of the ring grew stronger. The sword intent rose around Situt Songyue. There was sword energy in the endless wind and snow, so it was no longer pure. Heartless people had more weapons in their hands, so they had emotions. The purple ring turned into a dark purple gun. The gun was not big. In terms of length, it looked like an enlarged version of a pistol. But the caliber of the pistol was incredibly large, so the whole gun looked a little irregular. The huge caliber was like a handgun. It was one of the 12 murderous weapons in the dark world. Sunset. When a murderous weapon could become a gun, it meant that it could completely pour out all its energy. In the field of murderous weapons, it was called energy storage. Sunset ranked in the middle of the 12 murderous weapons, and its power was not very outstanding. But Sunset was the murderous weapon that accumulated energy the fastest among the 12 murderous weapons. Sunset roared in North America 3 years ago. 3 years were enough for Sunset to pour out its artillery fire again. Situt Songyue looked at Sunset in her palm. A trace of determination suddenly flashed in her beautiful eyes. I don't show up, but they can't forget me. Situt Songyue said. I don't fight, but it doesn't mean that I won't fight. She stood up. The handgun in her hand turned into a long sword shining with purple light under the sword intent. Then it turned into a ring. Situt Songyue walked down the steps of Changbai Palace, turned around, and looked at the 2 words Changbai, hanging high on the plaque in front of the palace. They knew each other until their hair turned white. In this ruthless city, the 2 words Changbai were the only deep affection. Ruthlessness was actually good, but Situt Songyue didn't like it. She could fight for nothing and give up everything. But the Wang family of Beihai moved against the Li family. Kunlun City moved against the Li family. People in the world moved against the Li family. She would never agree. Situt Songyue glanced at Tribulation and suddenly asked, how long will it take for Qin Weibai? Tribulation thought for a moment, shook his head and said, I haven't contacted her for a while. At least a month. I can give her a month. Situt Songyue said, I'll go to Linen now. She turned around and went down the mountain. In the wind and snow, her figure went all the way forward, becoming smaller and smaller. Lonely mountain, lonely snow. Her figure disappeared between the mountain and snow. Chapter 321. Bluffing had never worked in the dark world. Therefore, Qin Weibai never made empty threats. She would not go to dangerous places if she was not sure that she could escape unscathed. Mount Dibing of the Wang family of Beihai was a dangerous place. The existence of deity gave Qin Weibai the confidence to escape unscathed. She said that deity was in Beihai Province. Deity was in Beihai Province, less than 50 kilometers away from Mount Dibing. This was the suburb of Shenzhou City. It was a small but modern town with a wide view and excellent road conditions. It was also outside the core warning range of the Wang family of Beihai. A high-powered car was enough for deity to rush to Mount Dibing in the shortest time to deal with all accidents. Deity waited quietly in this small town. He held a signal receiver in his hand. From night to late night, and then to early morning, the red light representing crisis on the signal receiver had been quiet. It was not until it was close to noon that the signal receiver's green light flashed. That was the signal that Qin Weibai had returned safely. Seeing this scene, deity looked calm. He crushed the signal receiver with a little force in his palm. Then he stood up and left the only hotel in the town. There was a black off-road vehicle parked in front of the hotel. Deity got into the car alone, left the suburb of Shenzhou City along the road, and headed west. About 200 kilometers to the west of Shenzhou City was Fuxing Port, the largest port city in Beihai Province, and one of the largest port cities in the north of Zhongzhou State. In the dark world, Fuxing Port was the only blind spot of the Wang family of Beihai in Beihai Province. All kinds of people took root and sprouted here. Some superpowers and lone killers often used this place as one of their transit stations. Although the Wang family of Beihai had invested a lot of power here, it was still difficult for them to control everything in this city with great mobility. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, deity's car drove into Fuxing Port and finally entered a villa area with a sea view. Deity got out of the car and walked into the villa hall. It was still raining in Beihai Province, and the sky was gloomy. The curtains were drawn in the villa hall, and the lights were not on. A group of men in black sat quietly in the dim environment, motionless, like dead things. A corner of the curtain beside the French windows in the hall was opened. A little light came in. Qin Weibai stood quietly in the narrow corner, bathed in the only light in the hall. God closed the door. Almost all the men in black in the hall stood up at the same time and bowed slightly to God. Deity was dressed in casual clothes and had an ordinary appearance, but in the almost pitch-black hall, there was an unparalleled sense of reality. It was as if no matter how dark the surroundings were, people would be able to see all of his movements immediately. Qin Weibai turned around and said in a clear and melodious tone, "Thank you for your protection, Your Highness." Deity shook his head, looked at Qin Weibai, and asked, "Has Wang Tianzong left Mount Dibing?" "We can be sure that he has arrived at Kunlun City," Qin Weibai said calmly. Deity was silent. The group of black-clothed men in the hall were silent as well. The atmosphere suddenly became somewhat oppressive. Qin Weibai turned around again and looked at the gloomy and scattered rain outside the window. The rain continued to fall, and the entire North Sea province was damp and gloomy. In the darkness, Deity's voice finally sounded. "Wang Tianzong is no longer on Mount Dibing." He looked at the man in black in front of him. There were a total of 10 black-clothed men lined up neatly in the hall. The 10 black-clothed men bowed at the same time and said in a calm and hoarse voice, "We are willing to die for Your Highness." The muscles on Deity's face twitched slightly. He looked at Qin Weibai with cold eyes. Qin Weibai did not look back and said calmly, "Saint is already in Mount Dibing. Military Counselor will meet him in 2 hours. General and Duke will also enter Mount Dibing before dark to cooperate with you." Saint, Military Counselor, General, and Duke. Among the 12 supermasters of Samsara, they were the top 4 supermasters. Especially Saint and Military Counselor, they were the top combat capability under the Invincible Realm. When the two of them stood together, they were basically equivalent to an ordinary Invincible Realm expert. Deity still did not speak. He just looked at the 10 black-clothed men standing in front of him silently. 10 people. In the sequence of the Purgatory of Heaven capital, this was also a rare backbone force. Any one of them had at least a realm above the stabilization phase of the Thundershocking realm. And the most important thing was that they were all battle-hardened and had a tacit understanding with each other. They were 10 individuals, but at the critical moment, they could also become a whole. Even if he had enough psychological preparation before, when it came to the critical moment, Deity was still a little reluctant. This is a necessary sacrifice. Qin Weibai said, since we are targeting Wang Tianzong, we must use enough power to target some trump cards that are enough to turn the tables for him. And now this is also a rare opportunity. We are willing to die for your highness. The 10 black-clothed men bowed again and said in unison. Deity took a deep breath, glanced at them and said, get ready. Tonight, someone will pick you up to the core area of Mount Dibbing, and then act according to the plan. The 10 black-clothed men of the thunder-shocking realm responded at the same time. Deity walked in the darkness. With just one step, his figure had already arrived in front of Qin Weibai. In the faint light, Qin Weibai's profile was exquisite and perfect, like a dream or a fantasy. Deity looked at her attentively and suddenly said, Boss Qin, until now, do you still want to tell me that Samsara Palace's move is to replace the Polar Ground Alliance and make Snow Country your own foundation? Otherwise? Qin Weibai's voice was calm and indifferent. That's what I want to ask you. Deity narrowed his eyes. In the past 3 years, Samsara Palace has provoked a chaotic war in the whole Dark World. So far, you have suffered heavy losses. Plotting against Snow Country? 3 years ago, I believed what you said. But now, I don't think Samsara Palace has the possibility of winning. You are against the whole world, which has gone beyond the scope of our original cooperation. Qin Weibai looked out of the window without saying a word. What I don't understand most is that your main energy seems to be not on Snow Country at all, but on the Wang family of Beihai. Why? Deity continued. 2 experts at the peak of the invincible realm deserve respect even if one of them is in a special state. Qin Weibai said, whether in Snow Country or in any other situation, the hidden expert of the Wang family of Beihai has the strength to turn the tables. Now while Wang Tianzong is not here, we weaken the combat capability of the other expert at the peak of the invincible realm. What's incomprehensible about that? What about you? Deity said in a playful tone. Samsara Palace is now digging its own grave. Even if this time it weakens the Wang family of Beihai, how are you going to clean up the mess in Snow Country? Everything is expected, Qin Weibai said softly. We have our own way. Your Highness only needs to stop the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City. There was an imperceptible killing intent in Deity's twinkling eyes. He quietly turned his eyes to look out of the window, and the killing intent in his eyes became more and more obvious. From the beginning, he did not fully believe in Samsara Palace's plot against Snow Country. In the past 3 years, he saw every step of Samsara Palace, but he remained silent. He didn't care what Samsara Palace wanted, because it had nothing to do with him. According to the original agreement, the 2 sides cooperated. What the Purgatory of Heaven capital had to do was to stop the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City, so that Samsara Palace could get the foundation of Snow Country. The foundation of Snow Country was there. It didn't matter to Deity whether Samsara Palace could get it or not. What he cared about was the benefits he got from this cooperation. For example, in the new Tiannan province between Annan State and Zhongzhou State, the Purgatory of Heaven capital gradually occupied half of the territory, which would be an excellent springboard for the Purgatory of Heaven capital to enter Zhongzhou State in the future. Another example was that this time, when Wang Tianzong was not there, the Purgatory of Heaven capital and Samsara Palace sent experts to sneak into Mount Dibbing to target the peak invincible realm expert of the Wang family of Beihai who had never appeared. Any weakening of the Wang family of Beihai was also beneficial to him. So in the past 3 years, although the situation was getting more and more chaotic, Samsara Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital had been cooperating. Deity was even happy to see the current situation. So Deity didn't care what Samsara Palace did. As long as what Qin Weibai was doing was beneficial to the Purgatory of Heaven capital, he would not refuse. If they could really get the foundation of Samsara Palace, the Purgatory of Heaven capital would naturally continue to cooperate with Samsara Palace to attack the Wang family of Beihai. If Samsara Palace was digging its own grave, Deity didn't mind taking action at the most critical time to send them off. He didn't like Samsara Palace or Qin Weibai. If they could disappear from this world, Deity would be very happy. Deity also knew that Qin Weibai wouldn't like him and the Purgatory of Heaven capital. But because of Li Tianlan, He believed that Samsara Palace would never cheat him. After all, no matter what would happen in the future, at least for now, the existence of the purgatory of Heaven Capital was beneficial to Li Tianlan. Deity turned to look at the dark hall behind him, his eyes deep. The 10 thundershocking realm experts of the purgatory of Heaven Capital were still sitting, motionless. They and the 4 supermasters of Samsara were the main force to weaken the peak invincible realm expert on Mount Dibbing. He didn't know how many of these people would come back alive. He just hoped that they could be as Qin Weibai said, that the sacrifice was worth it. Wang Tianzong went to Kunlun City. Next they may go to Lin right away. Qin Weibai suddenly said. Her voice was light, without any emotion. But the atmosphere in the hall suddenly changed. Deity became more and more silent. The breathing of the 10 thundershocking realm experts sitting in the hall, which had been calm all the time, suddenly stopped. There was a long silence. There seemed to be a gust of wind with gloomy killing intent in the hall. I'm going back to East Island. Deity said slowly. What's your plan? Qin Weibai didn't speak. Her eyes were a little dazed. Standing in her position, she could see the blue sea ahead through the window. To the east was Mount Dibbing, to the north was Snow Country, and to the south was East Island. Down the sea, it was Zhongzhou State. Different directions, different roads, and different results. She remembered a piece of information she received a few hours ago. Li Tianlan went to Linen. Qin Weibai's heart, which was as calm as stagnant water, began to palpitate for no reason. Her thoughts were surging like a tide, and in a flash, they became huge waves. She knew that she should go north at this time. On Mount Dibbing, there would be a result after tonight. Next, Snow Country was the real top priority. And 3 years ago in Heaven Capital, she had sworn that she would never set foot on Zhongzhou State for the rest of her life. But now, looking at the sea in front of her, all her emotions suddenly fell into a state of almost losing control. That man was on the other side of the sea at this time. She would go north, because she could see the result of going north. But the endless thoughts were like a wild wolf all over, devouring all her reason. She wanted to cross the sea in front of her. Take a look at him. One last look. Qin Weibai bit her lip gently. Her perfect and delicate face was pale as if transparent. Chapter 322. When Lin Fengting walked out of Huading International Airport, the rain over Huading had stopped, and the dark clouds were gone. The setting sun burned the last of its light, illuminating the horizon with a fiery red and gorgeous color. Lin Yuxian followed his father out of the airport in a hurry and said subconsciously, Dad, would you like to eat something first? No need. Lin Fengting shook his head. Perhaps because he came to Huading, his heart relaxed a little, and a smile appeared on his face. Let's go directly to Linen. At that time, ask your grandpa Li to cook something delicious for you. His cooking skills are very good. When I was a child, my favorite food was the side dishes he made. When I was a child, Lin Yuxian muttered to himself and repeated the sentence. Lin Fengting's expression was a little complicated, and he whispered, when I was a child, the Wang family of Beihai, the Li family, and the Lin clan had a good relationship, and they had frequent contacts with each other. At that time I was about 16 or 17 years old. I, Tianzong, and Kuang to learn swordsmanship with Senior Li for 2 years. Earlier, it was Senior Wang of the Wang family of Beihai who laid the foundation for the 4 of us. Later, the 4 of us were in Switzerland and taught by your grandfather for a few years. The martial arts of the Wang family of Beihai and the Lin clan are different. Even the 24 moves of sword of the Li family are different from those of the Lin clan. At that time, in addition to strengthening the feelings of our younger generation, the 3 old people's approach was to cultivate the strongest martial arts masters. His eyes were a little wandering, and he seemed to think of something happy. He smiled and said, Those years were the most relaxing days for me. For people? Lin Yuxian asked. He only heard his father mention 3 people. Lin Fengting's smile stiffened, and his face became a little ugly. But in the end he said nothing and just said slowly, Let's go to Linen. Huading was not far from Linen, only 200 kilometers away. The father and son got in a taxi and told the driver the address. After the taxi got on the airport expressway, it went straight to Lin. Lin Fengting looked out of the window. The scenery outside the window went back quickly. The splendid sunset glow had already dimmed. The night spread and seemed to cover everything. The lights on the roadside were on. The light shone on the window, and Lin Fengting saw his face. It was a calm, almost indifferent face. Lin Fengting suddenly felt that this face was somewhat unfamiliar. He was surprised by his own calmness. He recalled the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai. He reminisced with a calmness that he had never experienced before. He recalled Wang Tianzong's involuntary actions, Wang Tianzong's clear conscience, the spectacular collapse of the Li family, and the silence and inaction of the Wang family of Beihai. Before, Lin Fengting had not understood why Wang Tianzong had abandoned the friendship between the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai so naturally, nor could he understand why the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family, who supported each other, had parted ways overnight. Therefore, for many years, he had a deep prejudice against Wang Tianzong's actions, and was even a little vigilant. He abandoned his friendship with the Li family. Naturally, he could abandon his friendship with the Lin clan like a pair of worn-out shoes. The Lin clan was outside the world. Therefore, it was hard for Lin Fengting to imagine how indifferent and cruel Wang Tianzong was when he made that series of decisions. However, it was not until this moment, looking at the strange face printed on the window, that Lin Fengting really understood that Wang Tianzong's heart was not indifferent and cruel at that time. The setting sun had completely disappeared. The night shrouded the world. Lin Fengting looked at his face in the window. The face flickered in the receding scenery outside the window. It was a little gloomy, and a little brilliant. Only calmness remained unchanged, as always. Lin Fengting felt that he saw Wang Tianzong. Many years ago, when he decided to stand by and do nothing about the Li family, his expression should be so calm. Only calmness. Those friendships still existed. Those times were still warm. The Li family did nothing wrong. Neither did the Wang family. The Lin clan had no reason to condemn anything. When the camaraderie that they had cultivated to protect their common interests was threatened by more important interests or even survival, betrayal, falling out, and standing idly by, everything seemed so natural and so calm. Lin Fengting's surname was Lin, Li Guangtu's surname was Li, and Wang Tianzong's surname was Wang. Different surnames were the biggest mistake. Have I changed? He looked at his son sitting next to him, and suddenly asked very seriously. Lin Yuxian froze for a moment, and then smiled. Father hasn't changed. Lin Fengting nodded and said, I haven't changed. It turns out that I'm the same as them. He gradually lost his emotions, and his whole person completely calmed down. At this moment he completely understood Wang Tianzong. But it could not change his choice. Just because he was the patriarch of the Lin clan. Lin Yuxian's cell phone rang. It was a short message. He took out his cell phone and looked at it. His face changed slightly. He hesitated and said, Dad, there is just news from Switzerland. My uncle's legs are not working. I'm afraid he will have to rely on a wheelchair in the future. Lin Fengting gently clenched his fist and nodded imperceptibly. Lin Su was blind, and his hearing and language ability began to decline. Now he lost his legs again under the backfire of the secret of heaven. Lin Su's surname was Lin. For the Lin clan, he could have no regrets. It was just like Lin Fengting's own choice. He said the cause and effect. Next, it was up to Lin Fengting to carry it out. The cause and effect was round, but the cause and effect in Lin Su's mouth was straight. He said everything clearly and straightforwardly, without the slightest twists and turns. That was why the backfire of the secret of heaven was so fierce and even tragic. If the Lin clan wanted to continue to prosper, it needed to keep Qin Weibai alive. The cause and effect between the Lin clan and Qin Weibai still originated from the Li family, or rather from Li Tianlan. This was the most straightforward cause and effect. And the twists and turns in the middle were the mysterious destiny of heaven. Lin Fengting had no choice. He came to Zhongzhou State, which proved that he had made up his mind. He could not give up the opportunity to let the Lin clan continue to prosper. So he wanted to keep Qin Weibai alive, and at the same time, he wanted to keep the root of the cause and effect. That was Li Tianlan. To protect Li Tianlan, He had to protect Li Honghe. This was cause and effect. Lin Fengting knew what it meant. It meant that when protecting this cause and effect, no matter who he faced, even if he faced the Wang family of Beihai or Wang Tianzong, he had to take action. There was no righteousness. Just for the Lin clan. Just like Wang Tianzong let the Li family collapse for the Wang family. When it concerned himself and he had no choice, all the reluctance, unwillingness, and inability would disappear. Because he had no choice, he could only be calm. He had to do this. It didn't matter what others thought or understood, because he had no choice at all. So he had a clear conscience. Wang Tianzong was like this back then. So was Lin Fengting today. How could there be right or wrong? Lin Fengting suddenly patted the driver's seat in the front row. All the sadness, helplessness, and self-mockery disappeared completely when his smile gradually spread, turning into the most basic indifference. He took out a handful of banknotes and threw them to the driver, saying blandly, "Sir, please drive faster. I'm in a hurry." It was cold in Kunlun. Wang Tianzong and Gu Xingyun were drinking. The wine was poured into a sparkling and translucent crystal cup, glowing with a light blue luster. Wang Tianzong picked up the glass in front of him and took a sip, whispering, "It's too strong. It's just right to have a drink before killing." Gu Xingyun's smile was elegant and mellow. In Kunlun City, which was extremely cold because of the whistling wind and snow, the god of war of Zhongzhou State was dressed in a cyan gown, elegant and unrestrained like a scholar who didn't care about the world. "That's right." Wang Tianzong nodded and drank up the wine in the glass. "Has His Majesty decided?" Gu Xingyun poured another glass of wine for Wang Tianzong and asked. He called His Majesty, and his tone was very natural. Not to mention the absolute strength symbolized by the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong alone was enough to win the respect of all invincible realm experts. "There's nothing to decide," Wang Tianzong said blandly. "This is something that must be done." He pointed to the TV on the wall beside him. Kunlun City was surrounded by wind and snow all year round, but the internal settings were extremely modern. Gu Xingyun's residence was extremely luxurious, and every detail was extremely meticulous. The huge TV, which occupied almost 1/3 of the wall, was playing a picture. On the picture were different states of Li Tianlan, moving or still, as if he was right in front of them. No one knew how long the picture had been playing. The two of them were no longer in the mood to watch it. "He's a threat." Gu Xingyun glanced at the TV and said, "I can't rest easy if he doesn't die." "Then let him die," Wang Tianzong said blandly. "When we go to Lin this time, I kill people, and you restrain them." His tone was very calm, so calm that there was not the slightest ripple in it. Gu Xingyun paused. He looked up at Wang Tianzong's eyes and asked, "Do you want to kill him yourself?" Wang Tianzong just drank the wine in silence. He made his attitude clear and didn't want to talk nonsense. The light blue wine was extremely strong. When he poured it into his stomach, he felt hot all over, and even his blood gradually boiled. There was a trace of killing intent in Wang Tianzong's eyes. It was very light, but it could obliterate everything. "Okay." Gu Xingyun laughed and said, "You kill Li Honghe, and I kill Li Tianlan." Wang Tianzong nodded indifferently. Gu Xingyun simply put the wine jar beside Wang Tianzong. He thought about it and asked, "Are the three of us enough?" "3 people. Wang Tianzong, Gu Xingyun, Gu Qianchuan." The worst one was an ordinary invincible realm expert. This kind of power, considering only the strength of martial arts and nothing else, was enough to wipe out any force in Zhongzhou State, including the remaining Li family. Gu Xingyun was asking if the 3 of them were strong enough. "What are you worried about?" Wang Tianzong asked. "Just in case." Gu Xingyun shook his head and said, "I don't want any accidents." Wang Tianzong reached out and gently knocked on the famous sword of the Wang family of Beihai beside him. "There will be no accidents. Under the Zhongzhou sword emperors listen to the sea. Any accidents could be controlled." Gu Xingyun looked at the ancient sword under Wang Tianzong's hand. He was silent for a long time and suddenly said, "There won't be a 4th person?" Wang Tianzong's eyes suddenly flashed a trace of cold electricity. He looked at Gu Xingyun and said nothing. "Is this why you hate Li Honghe?" Gu Xingyun laughed. It was well known that the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State and the God of War of Zhongzhou State had little contact. After Kunlun City replaced the Li family, it basically had no contact with the Wang family of Beihai. Even if there were conflicts on weekdays, the two parties had never publicly expressed any attitude. In short, the two should not be familiar with each other. But obviously, the actual relationship between the two was not like that. Do you hate the Li family? Gu Xingyan said. I think it should be hatred. Otherwise, you probably won't choose to do it in person just because of Li Tianlan. So in the battle that year, the injury of that person has not healed yet? This is the reason why you hate the Li family, so you want to kill Li Honghe in person. After the Li family's accident, an expert of the Jiang family who had just broken through the invincible realm entered Mount Dibing at night. This matter has something to do with Kunlun City, right? If the word hate is used in everything, I also have a reason to hate Kunlun City. Wang Tianzong's tone was gloomy and cold. Gu Xingyan's expression did not change. He said with a smile, "We are not friends, never." His words were simple. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai were not friends. But at least in those days, the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family were friends. Wang Tianzong and Li Guangtu were even friends. Don't talk nonsense. Wang Tianzong said blandly, Gu Qianchuan is too slow. We should set off soon. Gu Xingyan looked at his watch and suddenly said, What will you say after the Li family is completely destroyed? Destroy the Samsara Palace. Wang Tianzong said without hesitation. The Samsara Palace was now very close to the purgatory of Heaven capital. To destroy the Samsara Palace, they also needed to cooperate. And on the point of destroying the Samsara Palace, their position was still the same. Gu Xingyan nodded and said again, What about Sai City? Wang Tianzong paused while drinking. He was silent for a while, then glanced at Gu Xingyan and said, Let's wait and see. Gu Xingyan looked at Wang Tianzong. His eyes were a little cold. Okay. The atmosphere suddenly became a little quiet and depressed. The wine in the pot was poured into the cup, and then into the stomach. The fragrance of the wine was overflowing. Did I do wrong back then? Wang Tianzong drank the wine and asked without warning. Back then, there were many years in his and Gu Xingyan's lives. But Gu Xingyan knew which one he was asking about. This question did not need to be answered. In other words, no matter who answered it, there would only be one answer. Gu Xingyan thought for a while and said with a smile, Did you have a choice back then? Wang Tianzong laughed at himself. No. Only when there was no choice would he cooperate with people who were not friends. For example, Gu Xingyan in front of him. When he made that decision, he was really calm, so calm that there was no room for regret. At this time and night. To linen. This was the second cooperation between the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City. Not long after the two sides cooperated for the first time. Then there was the collapse of the Li family and the treason case of Li Guangtu. Then there was the silence and inaction of the Wang family of Beihai, which made countless people in the southeast group embarrassed and still could not be relieved. At that time, there was no Kunlun City in Zhongzhou State. But the first time Wang Tianzong and Gu Xingyan joined hands was also in the wind and snow. The wind and snow outside the window were whistling, as if through many years of quiet time, with a familiar chill. The beautifully decorated door was pushed open from the outside. Gu Qianchuan, the first elder of Kunlun City, appeared at the door. He looked at Wang Tianzong and Gu Xingyan, and said gloomily, The helicopter is ready. We can go to Linen at any time. Wang Tianzong said yes, picked up the wine glass, looked at the elegant and gentle Gu Xingyan in front of him, and said the same words as more than 20 years ago. Cheers. Chapter 323. In the evening, the wind blew by the west lake. The breeze and the night spread at the same time. Under the gloomy sky, the wind wrinkled the surface of the lake. The reflection of the lonely mountain in the clear water spread with the ripples, looking more and more verdant. Lonely Mountain was no longer a tourist attraction of the West Lake. After Li Honghe set foot on Lonely Mountain with the remaining veterans of the Li family, The Lin and officials soon announced that the interior of Lonely Mountain would be renovated. And then there was no then. The municipal government of Lin and reported the matter of Gushin to the provincial government of Jiangxia. The provincial government reported to the cabinet. The cabinet was silent. Therefore, the provincial government and the municipal government fell silent at the same time. The ticket office of Lonely Mountain was cancelled, and the surrounding areas were quietly moved out of the sightseeing scope of West Lake. The entire Li family began to take root in Lonely Mountain in the silence of the high-level officials of Zhongzhou State. The higher-ups were still silent. Everyone seemed to have forgotten the Li family and Lonely Mountain. So far, including Kunlun City, no one had expressed any opinion on Li Honghe's occupation of Lonely Mountain. Most of the time, silence was acquiescence. But most of the time, it could also be used as an excuse. However, it was obvious that as long as Li Honghe was still alive, the high-level officials of Zhongzhou State would not have any objection to the Li family's occupation of Lonely Mountain. There were no tourists on Lonely Mountain, and the people had been replaced by spiritual qi. When Li Tianlan came to the foot of Lonely Mountain, in the vast twilight, the verdant Lonely Mountain was located in the West Lake. It was hazy, and every grass and tree seemed to be indescribably beautiful. Flowers bloomed on Lonely Mountain. Li Tianlan got off the boat and walked straight along the quiet mountain road. Lonely Mountain was quiet. Li Tianlan's heart gradually became relaxed. He was relaxed, but also nervous. It had been 3 years since he first left the Li family's camp until today. But Li Tianlan still did not make any achievements. He entered the invincible realm in Heaven Capital, and was ranked on the divine list today. He was known as the Heavenly Son of Zhongzhou State. That was at the cost of his martial arts foundation. He became the young governor of Sai City, because of the friendship between the Li family and Sai City. East Emperor Palace was established. But today the East Emperor Palace was still pitifully weak. Li Tianlan suddenly felt a little timid. In these 3 years he seemed to have done a lot, but at the same time, he seemed to have done nothing. He was still in a state where he had just started. His martial Tao and sword intent had already reached a certain level, but the glory of the Li family was still bleak. Li Tianlan really wanted to tell those uncles and aunts on the mountain who had always been with the Li family, pinned all their hopes on him and still persisted. He wanted to tell them that he had done a good job outside. But was it really not bad? 3 years, everything that had happened today. It was too slow. In the end, it was still too slow. He didn't think he had done a good job. If he didn't do it well, he wouldn't dare to go up the mountain. In the twilight, his footsteps gradually slowed down, even becoming somewhat heavy. There was only the sound of the night wind blowing the treetops on Lonely Mountain. There were no guards on Lonely Mountain, and there was no need for guards. Those who were hostile to the Li family would basically not go up the mountain. For those who insisted on going up the mountain, it would be useless to put guards in the mountain. Therefore, on the isolated Lonely Mountain, there was only a cold and somewhat lonely path most of the time. A woman wearing rough clothes appeared at the end of the path. The woman's face was very beautiful. Although there were some wrinkles at the corners of her eyes, the stubbornness and persistence between her eyebrows gave her an indescribable feeling. The 2 ends of the road, one above and one below. The woman saw Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan also saw her. The 2 of them froze at the same time. There was a touch of surprise in the eyes of the woman who was no longer young. Her delicate eyebrows raised subconsciously, and suddenly there was a trace of indescribable heroism in her body. Li Tianlan slightly quickened his pace and came to the woman. Before he spoke, the woman had already taken the initiative to speak and said with a smile, "Young master, you're back." Li Tianlan nodded and called her Aunt Qingye. There were not many women who left Yuzhou with Li Honghe, and there were even fewer women. Qingye was not only a woman, but also a capable general of the Li family. Moreover, she was a relatively young one. She was Li Wangxing's mother, and had the experience of taking care of children. Therefore, it was Qingye who took care of Li Tianlan when he was a baby. Although Li Tianlan called her aunt, it was not an exaggeration to say that Qingye was his adoptive mother. Qingye reached out her hand and subconsciously wanted to touch Li Tianlan's head, but she withdrew her hand halfway. Her smile seemed to be more beautiful than before. Wangxing just came back once last week. It would have been better if you had come a few days earlier. I can meet Wangxing soon, Li Tianlan said with a smile. He hadn't seen Li Wangxing since he came back. But the final maneuver of the two academies was about to begin. Li Wangxing, as one of the four spirits of Zhongzhou State, was likely to be there in person. Where are you going? Li Tianlan asked. I'm going down to get something. Qingye smiled and said, a few years ago, not long after we came here, Yu Donglai, Senior Yu, came here once. He arranged some local people to send some fruits, vegetables, and meat every day. Young master, our life is much better than before. Not good enough. Li Tianlan said in a deep voice. He looked up at the seemingly endless mountain road and said softly, these years, how is everyone? Very good. Qingye was silent for a while and then said. She was still smiling, but her smile was extremely complicated. It was a kind of emotion that seemed to be happy and worried. This kind of emotion was so intense that Li Tianlan couldn't tell whether she was sad or happy for a while. It's just that His Highness is in poor health this year. Li Tianlan was shocked. It was an unchangeable fact that Li Honghe's body would get worse and worse as he lost control of his power. But he didn't expect it to happen so fast. Now it was only the third year. He took a deep breath and said, I'll go up first, Auntie. I'll chat with you later. Qingye nodded with a smile and passed by Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan took a deep look at her back. Compared with the beautiful but numb and desperate face in his memory, Qingye smiled more now. She would also be sad and anxious when she mentioned her grandfather's body. But now looking at her back, Li Tianlan only felt that she was heroic. The Li family had emotions again. When all these emotions came together, it was hope. This was the current situation of the Li family. The best situation. But the best had nothing to do with him. Li Honghe changed. So the Li family also changed. Li Honghe's health was getting worse and worse. Everyone in the Li family was worried, but this hope never disappeared. Even if Li Honghe died tonight, the hope of the Li family would naturally fall on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan turned around again and walked up the mountain quickly. His footsteps were still heavy, but they were full of firmness. There were some small wooden houses built on the top of Lonely Mountain. There were about 20 or 30 of them. The road on the mountain had been repaired, but the road condition was not good. It could only be said to be flat at best. The 20 or 30 small wooden houses were located in the green flowers and trees, like a small village built on the top of the mountain. The former Li family's camp had become today's Li village. The only thing that didn't change was the vast graveyard that made people tremble with fear. The cemetery was built on the ruins of Qingyun Temple. Mount Qingyun and Lonely Mountain were originally one. After Qingyun Temple disappeared, Mount Qingyun became Lonely Mountain. The highest peak of this lonely mountain had now become the cemetery of the Li family. Nearly 1,000 tombstones were neatly arranged layer by layer. The cemetery did not look gloomy in the night, but a little tragic and a little down. There was no one on the top of the mountain. Only a few lights were lit up in the small houses. Standing on the top of the mountain, Li Tianlan could clearly hear everyone's breathing. It was long, smooth and rhythmic. This was the breathing rhythm that would only appear after falling into a deep and obvious state. The Holy Family was obvious. Everyone seemed to want to restore their peak state after many years of silence, or even surpass the peak state. Li Tianlan's heart kept sinking. Finally, it sank to the bottom of the valley, just because everyone was meditating. But there were too few of them. Li Tianlan's face was pale. 16 people. Including Qingye, there were only 17 people. This was the Li family today. Li Tianlan's body shook, and an indescribable anger instantly occupied all his consciousness. His eyes were scarlet. When he left the border 3 years ago, there were still more than 100 people in the Li family. After the border battle, including the wounded, there were more than 60 people in the Li family who survived. Now 3 years later, there were less than 20 people left in the Li family. Where did they go? Li Tianlan looked at the large cemetery in front of him, hesitated for a moment, and walked over with difficulty. A stooped old man came out of the cemetery. The old man was thin, and his hair was already gray. Because of his hunchback, his figure looked a little thin. He was carrying a broom in his hand, and it seemed that he had just come back from sweeping the grave. Li Tianlan's footsteps paused. The moment he saw the old man, his mood seemed to suddenly become extremely calm. The old man also saw Li Tianlan. His seemingly turbid eyes lit up quietly, and he said indifferently, "You're back." Li Tianlan said yes. This was the reunion of grandfather and grandson after 3 years. No surprise, no accident. Calm as water, indifferent as night. Li Honghe put the broom aside, waved his hand, and said, "Come in with me." Li Tianlan walked to Li Honghe. He had too much to say, but he didn't know what to say for a while. Grandpa had lost a lot of weight, and his spine, which had been straight all his life, had become crooked. The once high-spirited god of war of Zhongzhou state had gone away. The old man, who had guarded the border with the Li family for 20 years and had endured and been silent, had also gone away. Now he was only in his twilight years. That was the weakness of the rest of his life, with a kind of strength that had almost been completely out of control. At this moment, Li Honghe was so powerful that he seemed to be able to tear the world apart, but it seemed that he might fall down completely in the next second. "Your body." Li Tianlan hesitated and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. "Don't worry." Li Honghe's expression was open-minded and peaceful. "It's not the time yet. As long as I want to hold on, I can at least hold on for another 2 or 3 years. What about you?" Li Honghe glanced at Li Tianlan. "What have you learned in the past 3 years?" My body has changed." Li Tianlan said slowly. "And, Grandpa, I've given up the 24 moves of sword now." In Heaven Capital, he had seen and used the world-shaking unique skill of the Li family from the perspective of the invincible realm. In 3 years, his sword had vaguely jumped out of the scope of the 24 moves of sword and gradually became his own kendo. He had completely understood the 24 moves of sword, and it was time to give up. Li Honghe nodded casually and said, "It's your own way. You decide it yourself." There was no light in the cemetery. The higher they went, the darker it was, so the lights from the small wooden houses under the cemetery became more and more dazzling. "Where are our people?" Li Tianlan was silent for a while and finally couldn't help asking. "Them." Li Honghe smiled, but his smile was very complicated. "They have gone to the place where they should go. Those who stay now are unwilling to go. When I die, these people will follow you." "Where did they go?" Li Tianlan did not relax and continued to ask. "The place where they should go." Li Honghe's tone was faint and without any emotion. Li Tianlan was about to continue asking, but Li Honghe had already changed the topic. "Tell me about your experience in the past 3 years. Where have you been and what have you learned?" Li Tianlan's 3 years were very simple, but it was very complicated. It seemed that there was nothing to say, but there was too much to say. Li Tianlan sorted out his thoughts and said slowly, "From leaving the Sky Academy to Sai City, to seeing Situtsongyue's useless heaven and earth, to the primeval forest of Snow Country and the Volga River, to thousands of miles of frozen polar regions, to the mirage in the Pacific Ocean and the falling stars outside Hanggu Pass." He talked about the transformation of his willpower, the hidden sword intent after recovery, the golden retriever that followed him, and the famous sword divine punishment that Lin Fengting gave him but was completely broken in his hands. In his story, there appeared the Dongqing clan by Qingqian, Dongqing Rushi, Wang Yuetong, Qin Weibai, Samsara Palace, and even the Purgatory of Heaven Capital and the Wang family of Beihai. He said a lot. Li Honghe just listened in silence, without any expression or any opinion. The Li family's cemetery was very big. The grandfather and grandson walked up and down, walking very slowly. The whole Li family was still meditating. Li Honghe took Li Tianlan back to his very small wooden house. There was almost no decoration in the wooden house. A hard bed, a wooden table, and a few stools were all the furniture. However, they could take root in such a place where they could feel the climate change, with sunshine, rain, and snow. Compared with the Li family's past, this place was like a paradise. Li Honghe turned on the light, sat down on the stool beside the wooden table, and said, "So you are now the young governor of Sai City, and the East Emperor Palace you established has received the first investment, and you have established a cooperative relationship with Jiang Shangyu. Everything can start after the final maneuver is over? Yes. Li Tianlan thought for a moment and nodded. So, are you sure about the final maneuver of the two academies? Li Honghe looked at his grandson who had been away for 3 years and asked with a smile. It's not a matter of whether I'm sure or not, but a matter of having to win. I will win. Li Tianlan's tone was flat. If only it were so simple. Li Honghe said softly. Tianlan, I can't be sure about your current martial arts progress, but I think before entering the invincible realm, you'd better hide your strength as much as possible. It seems that you can win a starting point for yourself if you win the final maneuver, but your opponents are the entire Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City. Your future is still very difficult. Li Tianlan was stunned. He couldn't figure out what Li Honghe meant for a moment. Grandpa, do you mean that I should give up the final maneuver? Li Honghe was silent. From his twinkling eyes, Li Tianlan saw hesitation and hesitation. The final maneuver had become the most critical step since Li Tianlan entered the secular world. Between advance and retreat, it was very likely to be two completely different fates. Li Honghe asked him to hide his strength, which was more conservative. Li Tianlan had no intention of evaluating this conservatism. For him, he had no way out. I won't give up, Li Tianlan said lightly. Tell me your reason. Li Honghe's tone was calm. The Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City have been enemies for a long time. In any case, my existence is a threat to them. Whether I win or lose the final maneuver, it won't change their attitude toward me. In this case, I'd better win the maneuver and let those who support me and intend to support me have more confidence. Li Tianlan said softly. Grandpa, you won't understand. If I lose to Wang Shengxiao in the maneuver, everything I've done before will be a joke. The Li family will also become a joke. I have no way out. Have you ever thought about the attitude of the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City? Li Honghe asked. They have shown an obvious attitude. Li Tianlan said. The reason why I can still live is that you are still alive, Grandpa. If they want to hurt me, they must get rid of you first. I have received the news that Wang Tianzong should be in Kunlun City now. Li Honghe suddenly raised his eyebrows. He looked at Li Tianlan and said in a low voice, In this case, you shouldn't have come back. Li Tianlan was silent. There were many things in the world that didn't matter whether they should or not, but whether they should do it or not. I have to come back. He enunciated each and every word clearly. Li Honghe was here. The people of the Li family were also here. If the Li family was destroyed under the joint efforts of Wang Tianzong and Gu Xingyun, then what was the Li family he guarded? What was the point? Maybe. Li Honghe looked at Li Tianlan with complicated eyes and suddenly said, If it were him, he wouldn't have come back. Who is he? Li Tianlan asked seriously. He carefully watched Li Honghe's expression and didn't want to miss any detail. Li Honghe kept his mouth shut and just looked at Li Tianlan quietly. I have a few questions, Li Tianlan said. I should have asked them 3 years ago. I hope you can answer my doubts, Grandpa. Say it. Li Honghe was expressionless. Does the master of Samsara Palace and Weibai have anything to do with you? Who is the master of Samsara Palace? Li Tianlan asked. There could be no love for no reason in this world. Samsara Palace's protection of him. Qin Weibai's deep love for him. Li Tianlan believed that there would be an explanation for all this. At present, this explanation could only be obtained from Li Honghe. Li Honghe looked at Li Tianlan silently. His eyes were a little strange and complicated. He looked at Li Tianlan for a long time, then shook his head and said, I don't know. You don't know? Li Tianlan asked in reply. I really don't know, Li Honghe said with a wry smile. It was the master of Samsara Palace who found me. At that time, you were still in the desert prison, and my state was very bad. At that time, unless I fought desperately, I was no match for the master of Samsara Palace. When she came to me, she was not interested in the Li family at all. She was only interested in you. I could see that she would not harm you. So when you left the border, I gave you the contact information she had left. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and continued. What about the Dongqing clan? The Li family owes the Dongqing clan, Li Honghe said blandly. It has to continue to owe them. Li Tianlan frowned again. The identity of the master of Samsara Palace was not revealed. The matter of the Dongqing clan was another answer in Li Honghe's mouth. The answer he got from the Dongqing clan was that the Dongqing clan owed the Li family, not the Li family owed the Dongqing clan. What else do you want to ask? Li Honghe glanced at Li Tianlan and said. The muscles at the corners of Li Tianlan's mouth trembled. He suddenly smiled and said, Does Grandpa know the purgatory of heaven capital? Yes. Li Honghe narrowed his eyes. Who is the deity of the purgatory of heaven capital? Li Tianlan looked at Li Honghe and asked. Li Honghe looked at Li Tianlan quietly, with a calm face. Is deity my father? Li Tianlan's voice trembled a little. It shouldn't be, right? He didn't know who deity was. But when he thought of what his grandfather had said to him a long time ago, he thought of deity's unique skill formed by countless changes of the 24 moves of sword, combined with his age and the conversation he had with Wang Tianzong in heaven capital. Li Tianlan didn't want to admit it. But countless speculations in his mind told him that the deity of the purgatory of heaven capital was his father, Li Guangtu. Li Tianlan really didn't want to admit it. Because when he broke through to the invincible realm in heaven capital, he could clearly feel that whether it was Wang Tianzong or deity, there was always a wisp of killing intent condensed on him. If deity was really his father, why did he want to kill him in heaven capital back then? He's not. Li Honghe finally spoke. He sighed softly and said, He's really not. Li Tianlan breathed a sigh of relief, and looked at Li Honghe quietly. So, the future of the Li family still depends on you. Li Honghe said softly. Li Tianlan nodded. Grandpa, don't worry. His tone was calm and confident. The Li family will regain its glory in my hands. Whether it's the Wang family of Beihai or Kunlun City, I will make them pay back little by little. Oh, the Li family. Li Honghe's eyes were in a trance. The Wang family of Beihai? For the first time, there was a trace of undisguised pain in his eyes. That pain was so clear and deep in his old eyes, it was like a scar was carved into his eyes. He smiled and laughed at himself. What if the Wang family of Beihai didn't owe the Li family? What? Li Tianlan was stunned. I mean, if it was the Li family that owed the Wang family of Beihai, what would you do? Li Honghe asked. Li Tianlan had never thought about this question. For a moment he didn't know what to say. He remembered what his grandfather had said to him in Lonely Mountain 3 years ago. In my life, I haven't done many right things, but I've done many wrong things. But many mistakes can be made up for in the end. But some mistakes can't be made up for today. I can only make the best of them. Make the best of them. What did the Li family really do wrong back then? Li Tianlan's brain was a little confused for a moment. What did we do wrong back then? You're right. Li Honghe smiled helplessly and sadly. It's my fault. I'm too cowardly. It's all my fault. A voice suddenly sounded, drifting, as if it were falling from the 9th heaven, covering the entire Lonely Mountain in an instant. You're right too. For many things there is no right or wrong. Only success or failure can determine the result. Why do you blame yourself, Senior Li? Li Tianlan stood up abruptly. It was Wang Tianzong's voice. He took a step subconsciously, and was about to go out. Don't move. Li Honghe suddenly roared in a low voice. Li Tianlan froze and stood where he was subconsciously. He still came. Li Honghe whispered he finally came. He slowly raised his palm. Li Tianlan's pupils suddenly contracted. In his sight, Li Honghe just raised his palm gently and crossed the air. But his whole arm seemed to be cut by a sword in the process of raising it. It was just a simple movement, but it spilled blood. The blood gushed out of Li Honghe's palm, but it didn't drip down. Instead, it floated in the air. It dyed the air red. The air seemed to have completely solidified. Li Honghe gently shook his hand. Countless beads of blood suddenly floated in the air, dyeing a large area of space red. Li Tianlan's pupils instantly contracted to the extreme. There was no air around him. Every corner of the small house was filled with sword energy unconsciously. The sword energy filled every inch of space, and had turned into exquisite and sharp gaseous sword shadows one after another. Follow me. Li Honghe said and suddenly clenched his fist. The powerful sword intent instantly spread around Li Honghe, and the sword energy quietly emerging in the whole house was directly swept away. Li Tianlan followed his grandfather out of the door. He saw everything outside. In an instant, even with his willpower, he couldn't help but feel a little suffocated for a while. There was absolute darkness everywhere outside the room. The bright moon over Lin and had completely disappeared. A vortex with a diameter of thousands of meters appeared at the highest point of the sky. The vortex flowed slowly and completely covered the whole mountain. The sword intent all over the sky roared and took shape in the flow of the vortex. In front of Li Tianlan, there were all swords. The air was completely torn apart and condensed into exquisite and sharp sword shadows one after another. The sword shadows covered the sky, the earth, and lonely mountain. Countless sword shadows were thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. Lonely mountain was disappearing. Heaven and earth were disappearing. The majestic and dense sword shadows appeared in every corner of the whole lonely mountain, densely packed. Li Tianlan couldn't see Wang Tianzong. Only his voice rang out in the night sky. Senior Li, as long as you can walk out of this sword curtain tonight, all the grievances between the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family in the past can be written off. Li Tianlan breathed quickly. His breath was even filled with sword intent, which stabbed his internal organs and made him feel a sharp pain. This was the first time that Li Tianlan had seen Wang Tianzong's sword intent. It was the peak of sword intent. Every grass, every tree, every mountain, every water, the whole world, as long as he needed, everything was the sword in his hand. It was invincible and invincible. The sword shadows that occupied the whole world hung in the air. But the entire Li family seemed to have no foothold under this sword curtain. The sword shadows were like a raging tide, covering the world, roaring and surging. This was the sword emperor of Zhongzhou state. What covered Lonely Mountain was the peak of sword intent in the entire dark world for decades. Chapter 324. The night turned into the deepest black, obscuring the moonlight and covering all the light. Everything on Lonely Mountain seemed to disappear completely. In all directions on the ground, in the sky and on the ground, as far as the eye could see, there were swords. The swords were densely packed together. The sword shadows were short and delicate, but they were indescribably sharp. Countless sword shadows hovered over the entire Lonely Mountain. Row after row, piece after piece, up and down everywhere, as far as the eye could see. Li Tianlan felt as if he had seen a sea. The ubiquitous sword intent around him was like the sea breeze on the sea. The sound of the wind was sharp but seemingly soft. It was a little cold and gloomy. Li Tianlan's breath was full of sword intent. The sword intent rushed into his internal organs through his breath and pierced his blood vessels. In an instant, Li Tianlan's body was already injured internally and externally. But the sword sea in front of him still hovered motionlessly in every corner of reality. It was like a calm sea. But no matter how calm it was still a sea, and it had the power to set off a raging tide and subvert everything at any time. Li Tianlan stared at the endless sword sea in front of him. He could feel that it was a sword strike. But this sword strike was completely beyond his understanding. He used to stand at the peak of martial arts. Even if his strength was gone now, his vision had never regressed. He could see that the world was quiet. He could see that the world was a void. He could see some of the trajectory of this sword strike. But he couldn't understand how powerful it was to have such an abundant and majestic sword intent. In the face of this sword strike, not to mention now, even if he entered the invincible realm in Heaven Capital, he might not have the slightest strength to resist. At this moment, Li Tianlan felt like an ant under the Sword Emperor's sword. The other members of the Li family on the top of the mountain were still motionless and seemed to be meditating. However, amidst the silence, some pained and hurried breathing sounds became extremely clear. The meditation had ended at the moment when the sword intent appeared. However, all the members of the Li family were completely blocked by this sword strike. The sword shadow and the sword energy coexisted, as if they were all over the world. Everyone was suppressed in place and could not move. Only Li Honghe remained calm. Wisps of sword intent spread around him. firmly protecting the space of about 10 meters around him. Wherever the sword intent passed, the sword shadows floating in front of him shattered. The sword shadow shattered into sword chi. The sword chi circled around Lonely Mountain and formed a new sword shadow. The cycle continued without end, and it seemed like the cycle of reincarnation. Li Honghe was motionless, letting the sword shadows in front of him break and reassemble. He kept releasing his sword intent, breaking the sword shadows within 10 meters around him. At this moment, the place where Li Honghe landed was the only pure land in Lonely Mountain. The pure land was only 10 meters wide, but the entire Lonely Mountain was more than 1,000 feet long. Li Honghe silently looked at the sea of swords in front of him that covered his whole vision, and even occupied his whole consciousness. He saw a large number of sword shadows shattering, and then saw a large number of sword shadows reforming. What an impressive move, shatter reincarnation. Li Honghe sighed softly. Did you derive this sword move by yourself? Wang Tianzong was silent. There was only a sea of swords on Lonely Mountain, but no sword emperor. Li Tianlan's heart suddenly shook. Broken reincarnation. It was the last move of the 24 moves of sword, the absolute sword. Or rather, it was the last half of the style. 3 years ago, Li Tianlan once got the half-style sword manual from Lin Fengting. But before that, even in the 24 moves of sword of the Li family, there was no such half-style. But recently, Wang Tianzong used a complete move, broken reincarnation. If this sword move was derived by himself, how familiar would he be with the first 23 moves of the 24 moves of sword? Tianzong, don't you come out and talk with me? Li Honghe laughed. Anyway, I'm very happy that you can come to Lonely Mountain today. The sea of swords seemed to fluctuate with Wang Tianzong's emotions. So the whole world was shaking in front of Li Tianlan's eyes. The huge vortex spinning endless sword intent in the sky paused for a moment. Silently, Wang Tianzong's figure appeared in front of Li Honghe and Li Tianlan. The three of them were less than 10 meters apart. Wang Tianzong looked at Li Honghe calmly. Li Honghe was also looking at Wang Tianzong. His eyes were complicated, self-deprecating, and a little guilty. Li Tianlan looked at this scene and felt like he was witnessing history. The grievances that had existed for many years clearly appeared in front of him. In the sea of swords in front of him, Wang Tianzong hesitated, but still bowed deeply to Li Honghe and whispered, "Uncle Li." Li Honghe laughed. The past grudges and grievances seemed to become clear with the words Uncle Li. "You hate me," Li Honghe said. "Hate doesn't make sense." Wang Tianzong shook his head. He looked at Li Honghe's increasingly old face, and his eyes were no longer calm. In a sense, in the past many years, Li Honghe was one of his closest elders. Even now, Wang Tianzong still clearly remembered the days when he learned swordsmanship with Li Honghe. The four of them learned the 24 moves of sword of the Li family, the 24 moves of sword of the Lin clan, and the 6 paths of reincarnation of the Wang family of Beihai. It was an unguarded time. The children studied hard, and the elders spared no effort in teaching. Wang Tianzong's emotions were chaotic and absent-minded. In the face of Li Tianlan, he could be calm because he was the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai and the sword emperor of Zhongzhou state. But in the face of Li Honghe, he thought he could be calm and indifferent as well. But until he stood in front of him, Wang Tianzong knew that he was still the child of that year. At this moment, he was neither the sword emperor nor the patriarch. He was just Wang Tianzong. "You deserve to hate me," Li Honghe whispered. "I owe the Wang family of Beihai too much. You deserve to kill me today." "I don't hate you." Wang Tianzong looked into Li Honghe's eyes. "I know very well that when the Heroes Club, Fantasy World, and the Polar Ground Alliance joined forces to invade Zhongzhou state, my father's serious injury and death a few years later had nothing to do with you." Li Honghe was silent. He had a clear conscience in that battle. The old patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai was seriously injured. He was also seriously injured. Wang Tianzong would not hate him because of this. Most of the grievances between the Li family and the Wang family came from that battle. "It's my fault. Everything happened because of me. I thought you would come looking for me a few years ago." Li Honghe laughed at himself. The Li family and the Wang family have walked side by side for hundreds of years. That's not fake. Wang Tianzong's voice was very soft and his emotions were very sincere. If the Li family doesn't enter the secular world from now on, I don't want to care about what happened that year. But now it's different. Li Honghe nodded and asked straightforwardly, "Will I die today?" "Yes." Wang Tianzong's tone was very respectful and firm. "How about Tianlan and the Li family?" Li Honghe asked again. "I'll only kill you today." Wang Tianzong's tone was indifferent. That was very clear. He only killed Li Honghe. As for whether others would kill Li Tianlan or not, he would not care. Li Honghe did not speak, just looked at Wang Tianzong quietly. Wang Tianzong's tone was calm and soft. "You can't go back if you're wrong. Senior Li, the biggest mistake in your life is that you educated a good grandson, but you didn't educate your son well. If you were the fanatic of that year, what would you do?" Li Honghe suddenly asked. "I don't know." Wang Tianzong's mood did not fluctuate at all. "I didn't think about it either." Li Honghe chuckled. "Ambition. Sure enough, it can achieve everything and destroy everything." Wang Tianzong was silent. But the sea of swords in heaven and earth began to shake gently. The sword energy raged and swept across the sky. "Whether you believe it or not, I want to say that I didn't know at the beginning," Li Honghe whispered. "Fanatic has been ambitious since he was a child, and he inherited the stubbornness of the Li family. You entered the invincible realm a few years later than him, and at that time, your father's health was extremely poor, so he thought he saw an opportunity. He wanted to change and wanted to have a say in Zhongzhou state. He thought that the strength of the Li family was irresistible, and the Li family did not need any allies to advance and retreat together. So, Wang Tianzong suddenly interrupted Li Honghe's words. So he wanted to annex the Wang family of Beihai, even destroy the whole Wang family of Beihai, replace the Wang family of Beihai, monopolize the whole southeast group, and then conquer the whole Zhongzhou state? Li Honghe's body stiffened. Li Tianlan, who had been watching silently, also trembled and looked at Li Honghe and Wang Tianzong in disbelief. He did do a lot of things in those days. Within the southeast group, the power contrast between the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai began to tilt. The power of the Li family even vaguely suppressed that of the Wang family of Beihai. During that time, you were all concerned about your father's health and neglected the control of the outside world. I was in charge of the southeast group, but most of the time I was staring at the prince group. By the time I realized what Fanatic had done, it was too late. He had completed his own layout, and was only waiting for your father's death. Then he could control everything. Wang Tianzong listened quietly. He nodded and said, "So you made the best of the mistake." "Yes, how could the friendship with the Wang family of Beihai be more important than your son and the Li family?" "I wanted to stop it." Li Honghe smiled a little miserably. "But you should know Fanatic's character. He was ambitious, resourceful, and his character was extreme. By the time he thought he could let me know, the general trend had basically been formed. It was not easy for me to stop it. I had been mediocre all my life and was not strong enough. At that time, your father was in danger, and Fanatic entered the invincible realm earlier than you. Countless people in the Southeast group put their hopes on him. During that time, his voice in the Southeast group was enough to go against my will. I didn't want to break with the Wang family of Beihai, but the situation had reached that point. It seemed that everyone was forcing me to break with the Wang family of Beihai and completely annex you. The yellow robe. Wang Tianzong's tone was full of sarcasm. It hasn't come to that point yet. Li Honghe shook his head. At least in my opinion, there was still a chance to calm the situation back then. I talked with Fanatic several times and did something secretly. He was my son, and I knew his character very well. According to his character, if he succeeded in annexing the Wang family of Beihai, the future of the Li family would either be extremely brilliant or be doomed eternally. His path was too extreme, but I didn't want that kind of risky future. I wanted to try my best to reverse all this. I even wanted to go to Mount Dibbing to communicate with your father. Li Honghe smiled bitterly. But you moved too fast. Before I was ready, you had already united with Gu Xingyun. and created the treason case on the border of Annan state. When I got the news, it was too late. Did I do something wrong? Wang Tianzong asked. He had asked this question to many people. Just a few hours ago, he had asked Gu Xingyun. Gu Xingyun said that he had no choice. But Li Honghe only kept silent. The treason case directly subverted the Li family. As the patriarch of the Li family, Li Honghe could not say that Wang Tianzong did the right thing. He could only choose to be silent. I don't know if I can believe you. But even if I can, Uncle Li, tell me, do I dare to believe it? The inheritance of the Wang family of Beihai for hundreds of years, the assets of trillions or even more, the stability of tens of millions of people, the future of hundreds of thousands of troops, and even the peace and stability of the entire Zhongzhou state. Wang Tianzong patted his chest. My father was in danger at that time, and all this was on me. If you were me, would you dare to bet on my trust in you with these things? The topic that had been suppressed in his heart for many years made him a little excited. He took a step forward and walked directly into the range of Li Honghe's sword energy. Answer me, if you were me, would you dare to bet? I wouldn't dare. Li Honghe finally spoke. His voice was dry and hoarse. I wouldn't dare either. Wang Tianzong took a deep breath and calmed down. And even if I dared, you might not be able to reverse everything at that time. The hundreds of years of affection between our two families may be as heavy as mountains and seas, but I have a clear conscience. If I hadn't taken action that year, everything that the Li family has today would be what the Wang family of Beihai has today. Maybe the Wang family of Beihai would be inferior to the Li family today, far inferior. Wang Tianzong said coldly. It was you who threatened the survival of the Wang family of Beihai. What choice did I have? If there was another choice, I wouldn't have let her besiege Li Kuangtu that year. When she just entered the invincible realm, she went to cooperate with Kunlun City to besiege Li Kuangtu. Both you and I should know what that means. That's the main reason why you hate me, right? Li Honghe said softly. She was beaten down to the invincible realm, and her injury has not healed yet. That was your most serious loss. If it hadn't happened, why would you be so tired all these years? You can think so. Wang Tianzong looked indifferent. The Li family wanted to annex the Wang family of Beihai, and I couldn't agree. Everything I did was with a clear conscience. But the Wang family was not destroyed, and she was beaten down to the invincible realm. In my eyes, that's all the grievances. He bowed to Li Honghe again and said softly, Senior Li, it was the Li family that taught me everything in the world. There is no right or wrong, only success or failure. I don't hate you. As long as you can walk through this sea of swords and appear in front of me, the grievances between the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai can be written off. His figure slowly disappeared in front of the sea of swords and became fainter and fainter. But his voice swept through the sky and echoed between heaven and earth. This is the 24 moves of sword that you taught me, and it's also my understanding of it. All my understanding has been turned into this move, break of reincarnation. Wang Tianzong said calmly. It's perfect to use the unique skill of the Li family to end the grievances with the Li family. Li Honghe looked at the sea of swords in front of him. The sea of swords was shaking, as if the sea was fluctuating. Huge waves were coming. A frenzy was coming. It was a pitch-black sea. Li Honghe's body lit up. Endless sword energy whistled in front of him, and turned into the purest light. He turned around and looked at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was also looking at Li Honghe. The Wang family of Beihai is right, Li Honghe said softly. Li Tianlan, who had completely calmed down, nodded and said slowly, the Li family is right. It was only ambition that was wrong. And there was no absolute right or wrong in the world. There was only success or failure. Even if it was a grievance, it should be pure. I'll go to the other side of the sea and have a look. Li Honghe pointed to the sea of swords in front of him and said softly, if you have a chance, leave quickly and don't worry about anything else. He took a step forward. The extreme and pure light suddenly spread wildly with Li Honghe's straightened body. Above Lonely Mountain, the tide suddenly sounded. The boundless sea of swords was completely violent in an instant. The whole sea was completely lifted up, rushed up into the sky, and fell rapidly. Violent swords. Chaotic swords. The sword light shuttled through every corner of Lonely Mountain, like a black tide, surging and raging. The light was still moving forward, slowly piercing the darkness. In the light, a little blood shot out. There was more and more blood. In the frozen space, the blood dyed the night red. The sword light shrouded Lonely Mountain. The moonlight shrouded West Lake. The broken bridge, the ancient tower, the lush flowers and plants, the clear water. The moonlight shone down. West Lake in the night was quiet and almost beautiful, like a picture scroll that should not exist in the world. Gu Xingyan stood quietly on the broken bridge. He was enjoying the scenery, but his whole mind was feeling the sword intent on Lonely Mountain. Lonely Mountain had become the only darkness in the night. The moonlight was completely shattered by the sword intent, and the whole Lonely Mountain was dark. The pure darkness was like a void. The lake water was turbulent in the sword intent. From far to near, the ripples in the water were spreading. The ripples grew bigger and bigger, and turned into waves. The waves became billows. The billows became waves. The violent force was shaking in West Lake with Lonely Mountain as the center. The lake water was lifted up in the absolute force and spread over the lake. The sound of the water almost suppressed everything. Gu Xingyan stood on the bridge and looked across the lake to Lonely Mountain. It was getting darker and darker on Lonely Mountain. Gu Xingyan gently raised the corner of his mouth and said to himself, "It's really lively." No one responded to his words. The sword intent on Lonely Mountain became more and more fierce and violent. Suddenly, a dazzling light appeared in the absolute darkness. The light flashed away, and then it was completely suppressed by the darkness again. Gu Xingyan laughed out loud. He knew that Li Honghe had taken action. But what covered Lonely Mountain was the peak sword intent in the whole dark world for decades, which was almost irresistible. Even at his peak, Li Honghe might not be able to take this sword stroke. Now his strength might have broken through the peak, but his body was much worse. How could he block this sword stroke? The Li family is destined to be destroyed tonight. Gu Xingyan muttered to himself again. For you, this is really something to be happy about. A cold but soft voice suddenly sounded in Gu Xingyan's ear. But will what you hope really happen? Gu Xingyan suddenly turned around and looked at the sky behind him. A white figure appeared silently less than 20 meters behind him. The woman wore a long white dress, but she wore a golden mask that covered most of her beautiful face. She stood in the air. Her slender figure seemed to block the bright moon. So Gu Xingyan's eyes dimmed, and there was only a white shadow left in his eyes. Situt Songyue? Gu Xingyan raised his eyebrows and sneered. You dare to intervene in this matter? Why not? Situt Songyue said quietly. Do you think it's useful for you to come? Gu Xingyan sneered. His elegant face looked a little ferocious and distorted in the darkness. Tonight, the Li family will be destroyed, and no one can stop it. After the Li family, it will be your Sai city. No one can escape. The Li family will not be destroyed. Situt Songyue said softly. Even if Wang Tianzong can't kill him, I will. Gu Xingyan stopped smiling and said in a cold tone. Do you think you can stop Wang Tianzong? Or can you stop me? It's enough that I can deal with you. Situt Songyue's voice was neither fast nor slow. Gu Xingyan had completely calmed down and said lightly. Why? Stop. Fuck you, madman. Gu Xingyan, who had just calmed down for less than a second, suddenly roared and rushed to the sky without hesitation. The moonlight was still bright, but the pale white moonlight completely dimmed in an instant. Heaven and earth were disappearing and going away. Situt Songyue's figure instantly became very clear in Gu Xingyan's sight. The white dress fluttered in the void. Gu Xingyan could see all the lines on the golden mask clearly. Situt Songyue's rosy and beautiful lips were tightly pursed, and her cold eyes had become determined and crazy in an instant. The moonlight was fading. Finally, it disappeared completely. Sound, waves, sword intent, light, all disappeared. In the dark void, only Gu Xingyan and Situt Songyue were left. Useless heaven and earth. This was the most powerful unique skill of Sai City. When Gu Xingyan's body slightly lost balance in Situt Songyue's domain, the 10th unique domain of Kunlun City had been fully opened. Situt Songyue raised her hand. His arm lit up with a devilish purple light that was powerful enough to shatter the void. The purple light turned into a small but ferocious hand cannon. Gu Xingyun's face was twisted and completely deformed. The distance between them was less than 50 meters. The famous murderous weapon-setting sun was dozens of meters away from Gu Xingyun. No hesitation, no hesitation. Situ Songyue didn't even think about it. She didn't waste time at all. The moment the purple hand cannon was formed, the muzzle was aimed at Gu Xingyun. She pulled the trigger. Boom. The silent void was broken. Heaven and earth were useless. The 10th unique domain. They were all broken. The entire extremely quiet world was completely occupied by the absolute roar in an instant. The violent sound occupied all hearing. The sky above the West Lake suddenly lit up with a purple light that pierced through heaven and earth. The purple light kept rising and dancing, breaking the broken bridge and evaporating the lake water. Gu Xingyun's body was directly blasted into the bottom of the lake by the murderous weapon. The whole West Lake was shaking violently. All the lake water within a radius of thousands of meters suddenly exploded under the shot. The monstrous waves directly surged to the sky thousands of meters high. The strong purple light blocked the moonlight and covered everything. The demonic purple chi was vast and mighty. Under the moonlight. On West Lake. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.